hop on over to my YouTube first to make sure I'm getting paid because every single time
Good
just make a
point.
mass of it. Yeah, I've
Good
gone over to
point.
check. They've turned off my pay, so let me quickly jump over YouTube Studio, isn't it? Live, and then ha 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 ha, cheeky YouTube. Yeah, it was turned off. I love how I turned this on beforehand, and then the moment I go off, they trigger it to turn off. So there must be something in the settings somewhere that's continuously turning me off.
You probably can't hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, I can. I just because I'm over in studio now, also checking. Yeah, so you have to set it in your channel level settings under the live studio in YouTube Studio, and then
Hmm.
it should always then show as it should always then automatically monetize. After the stream, I can talk. It's easy. I had to figure out where the hell it was. It was like
Hmm.
because it's buried intentionally. It's of course buried.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, or good evening, as they are in Ireland. How's everyone in Ireland this morning? And United States, people are coming in. We're starting to get people over. Mihal, what are you doing up so late? And you guys can hear us as well. Thanks for that, Mihal.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Yeah, it's been a while since Philip and I have been on together. I've been on, but Philip took a break for a little while and he's back into it in the new year. And there's been some exciting discoveries
Oh,
over the last couple of weeks. Some of them aren't necessarily new, actually relative to human time, but they're new to me. So
that's
and
good.
and and I think especially because Philip, you and I have been kind of chatting about the Silk Road a lot lately,
Yes.
and some of these discoveries are very relevant to that concept. And I've been listening to a lot of lectures by a lot of recent historians who
Mm.
are daring to challenge the conventional narrative of the Silk Road, and I think for the better. So I think we've got some
Yes.
exciting stuff to talk about today.
Oh, big time. We'll get deeper into that later to do with the
Yeah.
Silk Road and a lot of, especially a lot of big talks and stuff happening both in Hong Kong and London and stuff, and how to improve the study of the Silk Road. But we'll get deeper into
Yeah.
that later on.
Yeah.
Rachel, how have you been doing this week? Any news with yourself in general?
Oh, well, let's see. I've got another appointment at a different museum here in Korea to go and touch 500-year-old garments myself and examine them and see how they're made. So that's super exciting. That's going to be
Hmm.
March 24th. I'm going to be going to the National Folk Museum, which houses one of the largest collections of historical Korean garments in the world.
Hmm.
And I've got some really amazing jogori and tima that I'm going to be looking at for construction details, so I can start making those historical Korean garments with a level of accuracy that I could only fantasize about for European garments.
Hmm.
because unlike European extant medieval garments from Europe, which are generally never whole, they're always in pieces, right?
Hmm.
Some parts have rotted away, some parts have been cut away and turned into something else. So we have almost, in terms of entire garments from the 15th century, there are none.
Oh,
not
that's
not not in terms of like where everything is perfectly preserved. Whereas in Korea, because of the fascinatingly strange way in which they buried their dead in the Joseon dynasty, we have literally every tomb of every nobleman or noblewoman holds dozens of perfectly intact garments.
mm.
So I can actually go and look at these and I can very like within a 95% degree of accuracy reconstruct it, devise how they were made and then apply that to making my own.
Oh,
Whereas in 15th century European garments, we have to make a lot of assumptions. We
mm,
have to look at like 10 different garments across Europe to get a full picture. We
mm.
can't, it's just nothing survives that well intact from the 15th century. There's a couple of bog bodies from Denmark in particular. I'm thinking the Boxton man, 13th century
Mm.
gentleman who I'm pretty certain was murdered
Yeah.
and tossed in the bog. His garments, all of his wool garments, have survived perfectly. The
Oh,
linen
that's great.
garments disintegrated,
Mm.
but that's 13th century. It's like, okay, that's
Oh,
exciting if I were doing 13th century, but it's
mm.
not necessarily relevant to the 15th century. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's very exciting for me. March 23rd, I will be once again cuddling delicately and with utter reverence the garments of someone who lived 500 years ago. So
Mm.
that's really exciting.
Yeah, that is very, very exciting for sure. Kevin, what do you mean by this one as well? Let Rachel know about Raymond's Quiet Press. Which one is that, do you mean, Kevin?
Uh,
And
yeah, wait, I felt, gosh, I wasn't even looking at the chat. Damn it. I know. Okay. Oh, Kevin, I know about Raymond's Quiet Press. Raymond's Quiet Press, I've been shopping at their stall at Penzic for literally 30 years
oh
at this point.
yes, yeah, yeah. He was actually telling me about this the other day. Yeah, it's clicked into my
Yeah.
brain. He sent me the
Yeah.
link and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything the other day.
Yeah. Raymond's Quiet Press. I know Raymond, actually.
Oh really?
Sir Raymond. Yeah. Yeah. He's a knight in the Society for Creative Anachronism and a
Mm,
professional historical caster. And
yeah,
he's been making reproductions of medieval metal bits and bobs for literally decades at this point.
yeah.
And he does have quite an array of pieces for
Oh
certain.
nice.
In
Anyway,
fact, on some of my garments, I have some of his pieces, not
mm, mm.
any that are here in hand. So yeah,
Ah,
we might be looking at Raymond's Quiet Press for some metal bits and bobs, possibly for your ensemble.
yeah, I was just
Um,
thinking that as well because
yeah,
Kevin was sending me his stuff, and his stuff is amazing. I was like,
yeah,
God, we need to get him on for a live stream.
yeah.
Exceptionally good. I really, really like his stuff for sure. So yeah, definitely bring him on for sure. Mihal, what? And it's the same with Peter. Peter and Mihal, what the hell are you two doing up at this time? Go to bed. It's late over in Britain and Ireland.
or
Uh,
or very very early. Maybe they're up super early, Philip, to have a productive, busy day in a consumer economy.
oh, aye. Mihal, what's the story with your? You're saying you're editing your modifications for the video game Crusader Kings 3. I need to actually get Rachel on Crusader Kings 3. She'd like that one. Do you know the game Crusader Kings?
I have not heard of it. Um,
The video
Actually,
game.
that's kind of weird because normally I at least hear about these things, even if I don't play them.
Yeah, you probably would actually enjoy the video game Crusader Kings 3. It's a role playing game set in the court. You can pretty much pick any family. You at the very start of it, you pick any historical family you want to play as. I mean, any historical family you want to play as. In the, I think it's just the 12th and 10th century right now, but they're bringing in the 14th century, and they might be bringing in other eras as well. And this is as far as right now, I think it's as far as Ireland, all the way over to Japan, right? And you can pick any family to play as. I mean, any
But
family to
but
play as.
but Crusader King, so it's set in the Crusades in the 14th century.
So
There's
when the game originally came out, it was set. The setting was just Europe, and it was set just at the very start of the Crusades, around the 11th and 12th century. So when it
uh,
originally came out, it was Crusader Kings, but now the game has like completely expanded out, and at this point now, people pretty much play to role play as any family in the court, and even move up to become king, and we've got this map to play around with. Big, massive role playing game. I'd love to get Rachel onto it because I had my wife. My wife's addicted to Crusader Kings in her free time because of the role playing aspect, and it's more reading than it is. You know how like other video games, it's more like you play as a character, you run around the screen. This is more kind of they give you a map and you choose which way you're going to move around the map and stuff, and then every once in a while it pops up like a story scenario, and then it says like Sir Wallace has come up to you, and Sir Wallace has dropped his cup onto your dress. How do you react? And it gives you choices to pick. It's very much like that from
I,
time to time.
I mean, Philip, I just do living history. You just described a living history event. And any seriously, like especially the Sir So and So has dropped a cup of wine on your gown. What do you do?
Yeah.
That's me. I am the recipient of the cups of wine on my
Oh
gown.
no! I can just imagine your face if that ever happens to you.
Oh yeah, I've So I don't, my face is very reactive. It's very hard for me to hide what I'm thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I told you about the turkey juice incident, didn't I?
No, you haven't.
Oh my freaking God.
Go
So,
on.
you know that that beautiful red silk Burgundian style gown that's in a lot of my videos. It's the one where it's got the turn back collar and I'm wearing the pointed hat with it and it's beautiful
Mm,
and it's red and it's silk taffeta and it's all hand sewn. That dress is entirely hand sewn. There's not a single machine stitch anywhere on the 40 plus meters of hems and seams and stitching.
mm,
So its very first event, the very first event at which I wore it was a feast with it was a ball and a feast.
mm.
And the cook was doing, she was a little bit, she's into 16th century Italian cuisine, even though it was a 15th century event, but whatever.
Mm.
She made a dish from an Italian cookbook by Bartolomeo Scappi, which has a
Yeah,
recipe for turkey. It's one of the earliest, it is the earliest recipe for American turkey, right?
yeah.
And so she made turkey as per this recipe, and it was served in a bowl with the juices.
Oh,
And the so oh so
yeah.
I'm sitting at the table, and the server approaches me, and I see what's in his hands, and I see
Oh
that the
no.
juices are sloshing. And you see where this
Yeah.
is going.
Yes.
And as I say to him, "Do not serve that over my lap," he literally reaches over me like
Oh
this close
no.
with the bowl, and it tips, and the greasy turkey juice runs all the way down the front of my gown
Oh,
from my waist to the hem.
oh,
It soaks through
Jesus.
all four layers of
Oh no.
silk that
Oh.
is the gown, brand new. And do you know what turkey juice contains?
Ah.
It's
Some.
primarily fat. It's primarily fat. It's
Oh.
primarily fat. And so the front of my brand new hand sewn gown, reproduced in the style of Margaret of York, the Duchess of Burgundy, right,
Oh
is
no.
now just coated with a swath of, it's a foot wide, a
Mm.
swath of greasy turkey juice a foot wide. I screamed at him and I literally stood up and said, "You idiot. You have ruined my dress." I mean, I don't know how I've been told that the expression on my face was terrible in the original
Mm.
sense of that word. Um, he never came back to another event.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so then the dresses saga continues from there. So we ran down to the bathroom. We tried to get, soap to dissolve the grease, et cetera, et cetera. It just wasn't, it was too much. It was just too much grease. So we took it to the cleaners and I said to the cleaners, "Please spot treat this." I thought they would treat it like the silk dress it was. No, no. They ran it through their dry cleaning machines again and again and again and again to get those stains out, and it
Yeah. I
ruined
can
the
imagine.
silk. It
Oh.
ruined the silk. So that silk has never had the same shine again. The stains did eventually mostly come out, but the silk definitely does not have the the shine that it once did. So yeah, uh, I don't need to video game, Philip. I just do this shit in real life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mihal, are you taking a note of this for the modification for Crusader Kings 3? Because that was a lot. That there was a lot. Mihal responding there. I'm doing a historically accurate Ireland to Britain only in 976. So it's 10th century Ireland. So Ireland is now 100 of landed titles, editing family trees. Oh yes, you would do that, Mihal. Mihal specializes. If you guys don't know Mihal's channel, Mihal runs a channel, Clans and Dynasties, over on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, where he specializes in family dynasties, and surnames in Ireland and also Scotland as well. Mihal covers Scotland as well. So if you're into families dynasties in Ireland and Scotland, definitely head on over to Mihal's channel there. So yeah, I reckon that modification for Ireland and Scotland in Crusader Kings 3 would actually be pretty awesome. Hopefully, Mihal can shove in what was it called? Rachel's example there, highlighting the fact that she doesn't need to play video games. Her life already has enough drama in it.
My life is a medieval living history event. And actually, this is why I don't really enjoy video games, because I feel
Uh,
like I'm wasting my life when I could
yeah.
be doing it for real.
Mm.
So I don't enjoy video games for that reason for the most part. The one kind of game I do enjoy is a puzzle game. So
Yeah.
like I loved games like Myst, where it was just
Okay.
like puzzle after puzzle after puzzle.
Mm,
That
mm,
those
mm.
kind of games I enjoy, but
Yeah.
anything that involves role playing, I'd rather role play in real life.
Yeah, yeah. But then you've got myself then where I come back from an event and I'm still thirsty for more. So when I'm finished my work, I go straight back in. Especially there's a video game called Mountain Blade, and it's a big sandbox game, and it pretty much is just a living history event from the 10th century. I'm very bad for that kind of stuff from time to time. Not so bad right now, but I was back in 2015 and stuff, really addicted to them for sure. Um, oh yeah, okay, so there we go. Mihal is adding that event into his modification right now.
Fantastic. And yes, I fully encourage the incorporation of real living history disasters from my life. 100%. Yeah, so the question, would I play an escape room? I love escape rooms. I love escape rooms. They're like basically escape rooms are live role playing puzzle games,
Mm,
right? I love escape rooms. They're fantastic. I
mm,
even enjoy tabletop escape rooms. Actually, there's some card decks you can get that simulate an escape room. Yeah, love them.
yeah.
There was some questions of who why would that server do that? I think the server was an idiot is why he did that. He'd never served before. He wasn't trained. There was no training. You know, so medieval household, the people serving the food to the tables would have been trained from
Mm,
childhood on how to properly serve.
mm,
Whereas at your average living history event in any era, it's going to be volunteers who are just getting up to help get the food to the table. No training is provided.
mm,
And
mm,
apparently, this gentleman had never served anything in his life. So
mm.
he didn't think it would be a problem to take the volatile juice or bowl of turkey grease and serve it over top of a lady's lap. He didn't
Oh,
think that would be a problem. So, yeah.
yeah. Um, Susan is asking, and I'm actually curious about this as well, Rachel. What are you working on? What's going on here?
Yeah, so here's why I don't have time for games either. Because Philip, I don't know,
Yeah.
you must only have like one outfit, but I have a lot of
Yeah.
clothes that constantly. I have a lot of clothes that constantly need repair. So
Yeah.
even if I'm not making something new, I'm constantly having to repair things. This is the blue kirtle, the other one of the gowns I wear in these live streams that you all love so much.
Mm,
Yeah, well, I wear it for real, so it takes real damage. So I'm currently fixing all the various spots where seams have come undone, where hems have fallen, where fabric is worn away. So I don't understand any reenactors who have time to play games. Like, why aren't you
mm.
maintaining your kit?
Yeah, this is actually true because I remember working on the fringe to the cloak, and I remember it
Yep.
took me hours. I was just there. Like, don't get me wrong, happy out. It is true. Like everyone tells you, the moment you start working on a garment, just shove on a box set, and you're happy out for hours working on it. But it is very time consuming. You don't have hands to be playing video games. So that is very, very true. What do you normally do to distract yourself while you're working on something?
Oh, so I like to have something in the background, usually in another language. So I'll put on Netflix shows in a variety of languages just to keep my language skills up to date. There's a lot of, God knows, there's so many great documentaries on YouTube and podcasts. You know, medievalist.net, for those of you who aren't familiar,
Mm,
medievalist.net has a fantastic website. Check them out, medievalists, plural, .net. They have a whole podcast section. They have some awesome podcasts.
mm.
So yeah, I often listen to podcasts on history, on literature, on political topics that we're not going to go into here
Mm.
if I'm alone. But you know, the best thing to do if you're working on projects, honestly, is what's called a stitch and bitch. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
where you get a bunch of people together and you're all working on things and you're bitching about things at the same time.
Mm,
And sometimes you might bitch intellectually,
mm.
but sometimes it does just break down into a gauze fest. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I had to avoid them in Ireland because that's exactly what they turn into, is just bitching about people and the amount of fighting. Jesus.
Oh,
No, no,
really?
I couldn't
Okay.
fight it.
Most stitch and bitches I've attended are very positive and supportive. So I
That's
don't
great.
not like negatively bitching about people, but usually bitching about like, you know, people jumping turkey juice down their brand new 15th century gown.
Yes. Mm.
Things like that, for instance.
That would do it for sure.
Good
Where am
night,
I?
Mihal. Thank you for joining us. Question: Have I
Mihal,
seen the
yeah.
movie 1612? I have not even heard of the movie 1612.
Oh
So
yes, this is the one,
no.
Kevin. This is the one you got me in trouble for the other day. I don't know what the hell was the story with YouTube. So YouTube, I didn't tell you, but YouTube kicked me off a live stream. I was live streaming away, and Kevin was like, "Will you react to the YouTube video 1612?" So I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." Now remember, this was on YouTube, and on top of that as well, I'm not the first YouTuber to go on to YouTube to react to another video on YouTube. Okay, so I
Oh
go
God.
over, I
Oh wait, is
share it
that what
on.
happened? I got a notification that you'd started the stream again, and I was like, "What the hell happened?" Okay, that
Maybe.
was it. Go
But
on.
regardless, I jump on and I'm live streaming away. And then I got kicked off. And YouTube, proudly to itself, was. And by the way, I didn't even know what was going on. I was talking to myself for a good while, and Kevin and the rest of them were like, "Where's Philip gone? Where's he gone? Where's he gone? Where's he gone?" And I was there reacting to, because I was focused on the video. All I could see was video on my side. And so I was looking at the clothing, and I was like, "Oh, the clothing's really good." Now, remember, I don't specialize in what's called in the 17th century, so it was probably complete garbage, but it looked good to me anyway. Plus, it was fighting between the Hussars and the who was it? The Rus. Sorry, the men of Moscow. It was not Moscow, and the Lithuanian Commonwealth. Sorry, the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth winged Hussars. Okay, they were fighting each other in a siege, and the clothing looked absolutely magnificent to me. But as I said there, I don't specialize in 17th century clothing, right?
Right.
Regardless, I'm there reacting to the video. It looks absolutely magnificent. People are holding formation. The Winged Hussars are breaking formations. Looks spectacular. Looks great. I'm saying all this, by the way, while I've already been kicked off of YouTube. And I go onto my site. I'm like, where's everyone gone? What's going on here? And then, just as I'm closing everything up, I got a notification from YouTube saying to me, "Oh, you've been banned from the platform. However, we're going to let this slide this time because this is your first offense." And I'm like, "First offense for what? What have I
Holy shit! They
done?"
gave you got a channel strike. Oh
Yes,
my
they took
God.
it really, 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 really seriously.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
for reacting for a video
Wow.
in YouTube. But Kevin, that's not the point here. That video was already on YouTube. And also on the strike was like, "Oh, it was too violent." If it was too violent, what the hell is it
Why is
doing
it
on
on
YouTube?
YouTube?
Yeah, to start with, like, yeah. So now it's a case of, and by the way, everybody reacts to different videos all the time on YouTube. So what are we allowed to react to now? Or is it a case of some people can react to it and other people can't react to it? Because myself and Rachel have bitched about this before, and we hope YouTube hears about this one. But we
Yeah.
have noticed that some people are treated, like gems on the platform, and other people,
Yep.
like myself and Rachel, have to grind for every single thing we get on this platform. You're like, what's going
Yep.
on here? Like, um,
Yep.
but yeah, we could literally bitch about this all day when you've all come here for the news. So I'll start up this week's news without further ado before we end up bitching about YouTube all day. Right. So, Rachel, what we are
Yes.
looking at this week is actually my side of the news. So, what we'll do is we will zoom over here. Do you want me to place you up on top here? Is it?
Yeah. Put me on top. You know the algorithm likes that. It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird like that. Because I noticed that as well when I was doing a live stream with the other lads this weekend, and Mihal's gone off to bed now. But every single time I zoomed into the lads, poof, numbers started to jump up. The moment I go into anything like this, numbers start to drop down again. I don't know
Yeah.
what the crack is with the, and it's definitely, it must
It,
be an AI or something like.
yeah. So this is what I've determined. The software. So if you look at what this split screen looks like on the live
Mm,
stream feed, it looks terrible, and
yeah.
it's not. It doesn't look good.
Mm,
And the software, YouTube has software that recognizes if something looks good.
yeah.
So if it's like a whole screen, it prefers that over the split screen. That's what it comes
Yeah.
down to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Algorithm, you mean people? No, no, we don't mean people. No, we don't. we
Yeah.
mean the set of calculations that is performed by AI and machine learning to determine what should be shown to people.
Mm,
That's what we mean. Yeah.
yeah. What I'll do actually, let's see if I can play around with this because our numbers straight away from the get go, our numbers have jumped down again. So it
Yep.
is like
I so show it briefly, then just show them what it is, and then let's put it back to full screen and talk about it. Is what I
yeah.
suggest.
So basically, what we're looking at here at this picture is an archaeological dig that is happening over here on this island here at Solji, Ireland, right? And this
Nice.
island here is really important. Why is this island really important? Because this is where an Irish princess had fled to in the 10th century. So, first and foremost, who is this Irish princess? This Irish princess is a princess called Sunny V. And Sunny V was an Irish princess. We don't know what branch of the Enale dynasty she was from. Enale dynasty was one of the most dominant branches in Ireland in the 10th century and pretty much were the high kings of Ireland and were running Ireland at the time. I know a lot of people imagine Ireland's broken into 150 independent kingdoms. That's not how Ireland was run at the time. They were branched together as king groups, linked together through fosterage, hostages, and also marriage alliances. Okay, called the king group system. And at the top of
Right.
the king group system, so each one of these king groups, clans as we call them today, you would have a king, a ri, or I father, ri, right? And that would be the equivalent of like a yall or an okay? The problem is when people are translating the word king, they think
Uh,
it's like, oh, well, king of the Irish. And that's not the case. You have
right.
kings, you have over kings, you have high kings, and you even have
Well,
at one stage Brian Brew, who declares himself Emperor of the Gael.
right. And actually, the funny thing about that is even the Europeans who visit Ireland don't understand at the time, like at the
Yes.
time, don't
Yeah.
understand the hierarchy. They keep trying to apply their own concept from
Yes.
wherever they're from on the hierarchy. And so that's why you end up with these, travel vlogs that talk about King so and so, and then the Irish are like, King who?
Yes. That's why I'm right now. Because,
King who?
yeah, because of the fact that they're referring to this princess as an Irish princess to the king of the Irish. And I'm like, okay, so she's a part of the Enale dynasty, but what branch? Because at this point, there's four dominant branches. And to prevent a lot more fight, they actually took goes on who should be High King of Ireland to a
Mm,
certain degree. They are still like battering each other and kicking each other in the teeth and stuff. So it's not a perfect system, but it's a probably one of the best systems in Europe at the time, especially since Europe is dominated by war bands.
right.
Regardless, between the jigs and the reels, this Irish princess, Sunniva, her father passes away, who was an Irish king. And so she's married off to a Norwegian warlord in Norway. And she's sent off to Norway to live, right? But she doesn't, and this is happening in the 10th century, but she does not. And at the same time, as well, I need to take note to this that she's considered a semi mythology, semi historical character. Okay. And you can see, by the way, that they continuously add on more and more um, stories onto her that she's at a point
Right.
now where it's very questionable if she existed or not. But I'll
All right.
elaborate on that as I'm telling the story because it'll slowly click in and you too will slowly question, did she actually exist or not? Regardless, she's sent off to Norway to live with her abusive, um, pagan, heretic, denier of Jesus Christ of a husband who son of a she does not like. She hates her abusive husband. So her and her followers decide to run away. They just get up one morning and they just leave and they steal a boat and they put themselves hands and basically they get God to kind of bring them Ireland. That doesn't happen. What happens instead is they end up landing in the island here. Let me see if I can make that bigger. There we go.
Right.
Silvey Island, just off of Norway. Okay, so you can see that little. I wonder, you could probably just say that is Norway altogether. Regardless, She ends up on this island, right? And her and her followers are very, very ill prepared for living on this island. And so what ends up happening, and see, there's the numbers jumping up again. So this one definitely is the best.
I
What was
told
it called?
you.
1.5. Yeah, I don't know what the hell. Because the moment we switched over to the other one, and now it's gone up to 100. Okay, right, we're keeping to this one. This is the one we're keeping at today. Regardless, Sullivan and her followers, they're now they've landed us on this island very ill prepared. It's exceptionally cold on this island. It is always raining on this island. It is horrible. So what happens is that they find a cave. They all huddle up in that cave, and guess what? They start to run out of food. Right? Absolutely
Oh,
horrendous.
oh
One of her
no.
followers, so her followers go out and they start to steal food from the
Oh, okay.
locals living on the island.
I thought this
And
was going to be much darker, actually. When you said they were running out of food in a cave with just them, I'm thinking, oh well, whoever's the weakest is going to be it.
no, it doesn't turn into that much fun. It doesn't turn that much fun. But regardless, they go out there and they start stealing local food from the locals. And so one of her followers gets caught stealing a sheep, okay? And he runs up into the mountains, into the cave. And the locals do what the locals do best. The locals go and get their weapons and they go up into the cave to investigate what's going on here. And so Sinova and her followers are freaking out, they're panicking, and they're praying to God, God, please save us, please. And between the jigs and the reels, the cave collapses with them
Oh,
inside. Yep. And that's the end of Sinova.
that's
But
the end
then,
of the story?
yeah, well, that's
Wow.
the end of her anyway.
Right, right. Goodness.
Regardless, what happens then is that people go and see this what was it called, this cave, right? So you end up having, at the very start of this, you end up having pilgrims going up from Norway. It gets very popular between the Norwegians. They all go up to see it. Then you have people from Ireland to go up to see it. And recent archaeological digs seem to indicate that people from the Anglo-Saxon world may have been going up to visit the site as well, which is very, very exciting. So as of January this month, of 2026, archaeologists have started to do recent digs on the site, okay, which is very exciting for us for sure. And what they've already started to find at the very early stages of this archaeological dig of this monastic settlement. So, what happens eventually is around the 12th century, the local Norwegians, they start to dig up the site and they find bones. By the way, these bones are missing today. I don't know if these bones are probably in the monastic settlement, but when I was investigating in this, the bones seem to be missing. Okay. Regardless, the locals, they dig up the bones, and then on the site of the cave where the cave collapsed, they built a monastic settlement. And so now they're starting to do archaeological digs in the area, and they're starting to discover that this site is very Anglo-Saxon, which is very, very, very
Ah,
exciting. Now, the theory is right now is because Olaf the saint. So at the time when this monastic settlement is built, it seems to very much indicate that this monastic settlement was built around the time of Saint Olaf, who was king of Norway, and that he had a very good connection with the clergy of the Anglo-Saxon world, and that perhaps he brought the clergy of the Anglo-Saxon world up to this island to help populate the island, educate the locals on Christianity, and then build up the
mm.
site here. So that's quite exciting in these recent digs. And hopefully, we can find out even more information on Sunniva and pull her out of the mythology world and permanently into a proper historical background. Because, as you can clearly tell there, trying to find evidence of her existence is quite difficult as of right now, especially since it was the 12th century when the locals dug up her grave and started to, use her body as a relic. And then on top of that as well, trying to decipher who she actually was within the Irish world. Was she officially a part of the Enid dynasty, what branch of the Inel dynasty was she supposed to be, and then there's the whole confusing because, as you said earlier, because she is labeled as a princess to an Irish king. That's great from the Norwegian perspective, but from an Irish perspective, it's like, okay, she was a king, but like, was her father, a king of a little bit of, was he an over king? Was he a high king? Was he an emperor of the Gael? Like, who's your father? So
Right.
hopefully with more archaeological digs and finds, we can finally identify who she was. And also very exciting as well, hopefully from my perspective, we can start to find more Hiberno-Scandinavian finds in there, hopefully an entire bog body. That would be absolutely exciting for me. So I will be paying attention to this archaeological dig, and hopefully we can find out more information of what's going on.
Yeah, I think this really underscores for many people who are watching, hopefully, that history is not set in stone, that our understanding of history is flawed and incomplete,
Mm,
and that we are constantly making new discoveries to fill in these blanks. And
yeah.
that also, with the exception of a very few places on this planet, for the most part, we do not have a contiguous and continuous record of the past, right? We
Mm,
don't we don't have someone just writing every single day, this is what happened today, this is what happened today, this is what happened today. That's
mm,
that's very rare, which means we have to rely on all these different sources to form a picture of the past. And that's why we may discover that this princess, in quotes, was a real person, or
mm,
we might have to continue to have to say, thus far she seems to be only legendary.
yeah.
There are a lot of kings and queens and princes and princesses all over the world from ancient times who are more legendary than real.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting if we can find something pointing to her, and that could happen. That happened in the case of the Trojan War, for
Yeah.
instance. For a long time, the Trojan War was considered a history, and then in more recent times, we decided it was legend.
Mm,
And then they found those Assyrian archives, right, from the era, contemporary records talking about this conflict in Walusa and talking about a Prince Paris. And
mm,
so the Prince of Walusa. So then suddenly we realize, holy shit, this thing really happened.
mm,
Probably not with the intervention of the gods, like Athena disguising people and Zeus giving people extra power or whatever. But so it could be, it wouldn't surprise me, Philip, if we found records about this princess that weren't from Ireland, right?
mm,
Like it's just like the records about the Trojan War aren't from Troy, they're from Assyria, the Assyrian
mm,
Empire.
yeah.
Um, the records that we might find about her might be somewhere in Norway, right?
Yeah. You okay?
Yeah, I just keep when I'm gesticulating, then there are pins in my hem, so my fingers are bleeding. It's okay. I
Oh,
even I even inserted the needle under my fingernail,
oh
so
no.
I'll have to do something about that later on. That
Okay.
involves disinfecting it.
Yeah, if you want to jump off at any time to go fix that, you're more than welcome.
That's fine. It's
just being a
okay.
warrior, hammering on.
I'll just poke more holes. It's okay.
Oh no.
I prefer to do bulk wound care when I'm sewing.
But yeah, don't Rachel. If you need to, don't hesitate to jump off there. I can easily take
Okay,
over. No
it's all fine.
problems.
It's all fine.
So much events could respond for some introduction of the Y DNA from Britain and Ireland to Scandinavia. Yeah, I was quite curious about this as well. Is there any way to get DNA from like a bog body or another kind of body that's found in the
Yeah, I mean,
the ground and stuff?
yeah, it depends on which parts have survived. Bog bodies may or may not still have uncorrupted DNA, depending on the way in which they were preserved, from my
Okay.
understanding.
Mm,
So, sometimes DNA breaks down, and
mm,
given the conditions, and sometimes it doesn't. My feeling is that bog bodies are probably a lot more likely to have preserved DNA than,
mm,
say, a bone is.
yeah.
But again, it also kind of depends on how the bog body was preserved. It's like a fossilized dinosaur doesn't really have DNA anymore.
Mm,
The mosquito that might have dinosaur blood preserved in amber, well, that's something different.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, proper exciting stuff. Just popping over to Kevin's other question as well. Some kings probably got written out of history. Yeah, I do reckon a lot of kings probably got written out of history for sure, especially in the early medieval period when it's such a kind of who has the biggest stick society. I reckon there was a lot of kings written out of history. And you get that indication as well in the Irish sources when you've got so many of these princesses, and you're like, okay, who's your dad? And they give you a name of this father, and it's like, I've never heard of this father before. Like, who is he? So, yeah, I definitely believe that in the Irish annals, that's definitely the case where we have a lot of men who had smaller sticks that ended up being written out of history, sadly. So, yeah,
Right.
I definitely believe in that one. They're getting even better at testing out DNA, even when there are issues now. Yeah, very, very, very exciting stuff. The development and recent study of DNA testing is getting absolutely magnificent these days. I
Right.
can give you all the DNA that.
What the
Okay,
heck?
somebody's
Why is
into. What's
why
that?
is that showing? Why is that comment even showing?
Someone's been a bit
Okay.
too playful. Um, what was it called? Okay, now you're getting banned. There's banter and then there's
Is
banter.
yeah, right. Is I have somehow I have no control over the chat. So
Yeah.
on my
Um,
side.
what was it called? Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I was assuming. Tycon, that the acids are probably, you know, uh wait, what? Oops, something went wrong. Reload the page. Okay. Am
okay.
I still there?
Yeah, you're still flying.
Okay, the I'm now getting an error message for the live chat. But yeah, that's what I had read somewhere, that the bog body the acids that usually make bog bodies are pretty deleterious.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
I'm just gonna check
yeah.
your site actually. I think it's all 1 second actually. No, you're still okay
Anyways,
back again. Sorry about that.
okay, great. No, great. No
It kind
problem.
of, yeah, it kind of just hiccuped for a second, but you're back on. It's working perfectly fine now. Um,
Yeah, I got a message that was discuss second sweetly cute. It said, "Oops, something went wrong. We're fixing it. Be back in a moment."
oh, that's
Like,
grand.
okay. That's lovely. Thank you. But so basically, I can't see the chat at all. So if there are any questions that I need to answer, you'll have to let me know. The chat's gone for me. It's gone. She's gone.
Couldn't to Vishigama? How am I feeling? My Irish, by the way, is absolutely terrible. But how am I feeling today? I'm feeling great today, to be honest with you. Rachel, Kunasatatu, how are you today?
Oh yeah, life is great. Life is great. Nothing's wrong. Everything's happy. Look, I'm chatting. I'm here chatting with you about history and history news while fixing medieval garments. So hey, what more could I ask for, really? Yeah.
We'll pop
Yeah, but
over
it's
to.
it's
Go on.
very interesting, that you're. It seems that most of our news is somehow relating to Scandinavia.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a lot of recent archaeological digs around Scandinavia. And then
Yeah,
on top of that as well, it helps that both Hong Kong, Japan, and Beijing are talking about the Silk Road a lot and then connecting it to Dublin with the Viking world and then bringing it around into the likes of, well, we'll go into deeper conversation about that later. But
yeah,
it does help
yeah,
that both Beijing and Hong Kong and stuff are trying to connect the Silk Road over to Dublin and stuff as well. So, yeah, a lot of people are talking about the Vikings this week, so that's really, really handy for us. Talking about Vikings and what we're talking about as well. Rachel, what's
yeah.
the story with this one here?
Yeah, so that, my dear, is silk from the Augsburg ship burial. That
Oh,
really famous ship burial that was like
mm,
excavated in 1904. The famous burial ship, the one that made everyone think, oh, the Vikings must have always been buried in ships,
mm,
right? Even though that's not true. Um, anyway, this is actually okay. This is actually 10 years old, but it was new to me, so I'm going to bet it was new to many of you.
yes.
So about 10 years, I guess it's been 12 years ago at this point, textile history researchers went and re-examined the textiles found in that ship. So for those who don't know, the Augsburg ship had hundreds of textile pieces in it, which
Mm,
is amazing. surviving from the 10th century.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of silk, and silk is not in that era, is still not manufactured in Scandinavia. It's not
Yeah.
manufactured anywhere near Scandinavia. It's not made in Europe at all in that era. It has to be imported from very far afield. And the fact that there was so much silk in this burial is really significant. Now, they started looking at these textiles, and they really started paying attention to the motifs and the style of weaving so that they could accurately identify the point of origin of this silk. And those pieces that you see there come from Persia.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a weave called samitam, and it's a specific kind of weave that was woven in the 9th and 10th century. It was woven in what was then Persia, which is a different on the map than it is now. The Persian Empire as was. And one of the reasons that they know they're from Persia is because of the motifs on them. There are a lot of symbols and animals that are taken directly out of Persian mythology, including the shahrokh, which is, some people just call it a rock. It's one of these giant mythical birds, that's like massively sized, mythical megafauna basically. And there's actually, the shahrokh is actually depicted on multiple pieces.
Oh, wow.
And so this shows just how tightly connected Sweden, Norway, and Denmark were by trade routes to, the Middle East, the Far East, South Asia, East Asia. And not only that, they found these beads are Persian silk. And what they've discovered is that in general, it seems that the silk was not made into whole garments, at least not the extant bits they have. They cut the silk up to make decorative trim. So that's why you see all these strips. It's because it was cut into strips so they could like maximally use it on as many garments as possible decoratively, rather than making a single whole garment out of it. They also found silk that had Irish style crosses on it, embroidered onto it. And they think that those might actually have come from Ireland. So, so you've got silk that's been either purchased through Ireland. The cynical person is going to say, oh, they raided it from a monastery, but maybe not. Maybe they actually traded for it in Dublin, for instance.
Yeah, because this is the thing as well. I was talking about this the other day, is that everybody assumes that for the 200 years that the Vikings were just raiding Ireland, and that's not the case at all. Actually, by the time we get up to 840, Mel Shocknod I has already pinned down and gotten rid of a lot of the major troublemakers inside of Ireland that were causing massive raids into Ireland. And then by the time we get up to around 850, 860, Ivor the Boneless and Olaf the White has pretty much monopolized the protection racket around Ireland to prevent outside pirates, Vikings, from attacking the coasts of Ireland. And they themselves, the Ivor the Boneless and Olaf the White, have then fostered their children, have marriage alliances with local Irish women and stuff. So they're a part of society. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that they're Irish. They're referred to as kind of like foreign Irish, kind of, and still at the same time also at times called Norwegians, well, men of Luckland, Norwegians and stuff. So they're not Irish, but they're now a part of the Irish system by the time you get up to 850, 860. And then their children then are referred to as Gall Gael as well, kind of foreign Irish, but they're, kind of recognized as Irish, but at the same time, not a part of the clans and the king groups of Ireland, but still a part of the assemblies and stuff. And they themselves will continue running this kind of protection racket in Ireland, preventing pirates from attacking the trade routes going from Norway over to the Iberian Peninsula, which is definitely something we'll have to advance into more. And as you said there, like, it really stops a lot of this outside raiding going on.
Right.
But don't get me wrong. Maybe it was stolen between the period of 793.
It could have been. I think we need to stop assuming that anything Irish that ends up elsewhere than Ireland in this era has perforce been stolen.
Yeah.
through some kind of illicit action. Like, maybe give the Irish a little more credit than that.
But it's not that. There's a reason why Ivor the Boneless was so absolutely terrifying. Like even today, everybody knows today, almost 1,400 years after the 1,200 years after these events, people still today fear Ivor the Boneless. And so, never mind how people thought back in the medieval period to the name Ivor the Boneless. Like he ran a very, very successful protection racket in the seas of Ireland,
Right.
and made Dublin a lot of money. So it was most likely, in my opinion, probably more from trade rather than raiding. But at the same
Right.
time, it is the Viking Age, and they were famous for pulling off successful pirating raids.
I mean, and not just, I mean, that's the other thing. I love that you use the word pirate, because
Yeah,
it really puts it in perspective, right? That is what is happening. The golden age of piracy isn't just in the 17th century.
mm,
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was very excited to see. This new research, and a book has actually been published that now is definitely long since out there on the silk trade and Scandinavia, basically medieval Scandinavia. So I'm confident that that would be a very interesting book to look into if we're looking to expand their understanding of the culture, the textile culture, fashion history, and the economics
mm,
of Scandinavia in this era, which of course absolutely includes Ireland 100%.
mm, mm.
So, the thing is that when you find garments like this, it's never a question of just local importance, right? This has ramifications for understanding the Silk Road.
Oh yeah, big time. Jim has a really, really good question on this one as well. Was the color painted on the silk, or was it different colored silk thread?
That is an excellent question. It is woven.
Mm,
So this is a woven pattern. Yeah. So
yeah.
those are different colored silk threads. So it's a technique that results in something called lampas generally, and they were very, very popular. Very expensive, lampas were, but they were very, very popular for that reason, because to have even a garment decorated in bands of this fabric would have been hardcore conspicuous consumption.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I can imagine. All right, guys. If I end up skipping your question, it's not out of a bad bias or anything. I'm just trying to focus on the questions to do with this topic, because we've got bombarded with tons and tons of questions right now. Um, did they use beeswax? I'm assuming you're talking about the clothing
Yes.
itself. Oh, they did.
Well, okay. So wait, are you talking about for sewing? Then yes, did they use beeswax to smooth their thread in
Oh no,
sewing? If
sorry.
that's,
Susan
oh,
was asking, "Where's your
oh,
beeswax?" Sorry.
oh,
Well, there they
yeah.
are.
It's right here. I found it. It was in a suitcase that had not been properly unpacked
Hmm.
from my last trip. Yeah. Okay. Next, any other questions about the
I'm
topic? As
not
I said,
quite
I
sure about this one. Jupiter, did they use chopstick? What do you mean by that, Jupiter?
okay.
Definitely expand on that one.
If he means did they use chopsticks in Europe in the Middle Ages, the answer is no.
Hmm.
They did not. They used spoons, knives, and fingers.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
what they used.
Jupiter, do you mean for like what was it called? Oh my God, what am I thinking? For making clothing and stuff? I don't know. I don't think so. Um, is that a German outfit? Is your clothing German, or are you talking about the silk? If you're talking about the clothing itself, that find was from Sweden, wasn't it?
That's the Augsburg burials. So yeah.
Oh yeah, Sweden.
Um, this what I'm wearing here. This is 1480 Florence.
Mm,
So not German. Nope, not German at all. Very Florence. Very, very, very Florence.
mm, mm,
So
mm.
Italian, in case you don't know where Florence is.
Okay, and the rest of it, I don't want to sound biased or anything, or we'd end up talking all day about the different because there's a lot of really, really great questions, but they're all way off topic, from people's clan names to what's it called, bagpipes and stuff. Questions more suited for the weekend. This weekend, myself, Mihal, Clans and Dynasties, and Dr. Owen O'Neill will answer all those questions. So be here for that one, okay? So anything
Al-
to do with clans or bagpipes or any of that kind of stuff, we'll
al-
save
Although
those questions for the weekend.
although bagpipes, I can answer about bagpipes because I'm a one of my specialties is music and dance from this
Oh
era.
yeah. Well, the
Bag,
question
bag,
is, do you play the
you know,
bagpipes?
do you play them?
Well, I
No, I
don't.
do
Do you?
not. I don't, and neither does neither does Philip. But I have lots of friends who do, but not those garbage sounding Highland pipes, like actual medieval bagpipes that sound nice when you hear them. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't. I do not. I can twitter on a lute very poorly, and that's about it. Yeah.
Hmm. And the other question here, we'll answer this one here before I move on to the next topic. Hello, Rachel. What time period are you from? Where are you from right now, Rachel? What's your clothing setting?
Yeah. Once again, I am currently in 1480s Florence, and I have a luxury French tapestry behind me. This is a real. This is real. It's not. It's not. It's not CGI or AI or anything like this. So, yeah, 1480 Florence.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Welcome to my private chamber in my palazzo.
Mm. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Um, I do play medieval bagpipes. Kevin plays medieval bagpipes. So if you want to find anybody who's playing medieval bagpipes, definitely get in contact with Kevin there. Moving on. No, the next one is a lot of argument in Ireland. So just to take a step back here, this, by the way, guys, if you're wondering who this is, one second now, I'll get her name back up. I apologize for this one. Professor Maria Teresa Flanagan. Professor Maria Teresa Flanagan, okay? And she has a new book coming out dated right now to October 2026, and that name is going to be Strongbow in Ireland and the Undue Empire, right?
Oh,
And in this book, she is going to be only highlighting the solid evidence, mostly focusing on charter evidence. And she highlights this in the title right now. Right now, there is no cover for this book, and it is due to come out for October 2026. Okay? Now, this book is very, very important. Why is this book so important? Because right now in Ireland, we are having a lot of arguments to do with nationalism and unifying the island of Ireland by 2030. Rachel, Rachel,
are we now?
Rachel, it gets better. It gets better, Rachel. It gets better, right? Now, don't get me wrong. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better, Rachel. Do
What
you know
does
what
it?
else? Do you know what else we want to do by well, not us particular, the French. Do you know what the French want to do by 2030?
Oh God, what?
They want to have a big nationalist festival in England, France, Britain, and Ireland. They want to have a big celebration to the Norman invasions of Ireland, well, Britain and Ireland. At the same time, the Irish government is trying to unify the island of Ireland.
Oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Talk about tone deaf. Read the room, France. Read the room.
Oh, yes. So this
I'm
has started so many
polarization.
arguments, right?
Oh my God.
Because, and don't get me wrong, everyone in the comment section, I understand the majority of you understand that people of the medieval era did not understand nationalism, okay?
Yeah.
Rachel, you understand that the people of the medieval era did not understand nationalism. I mean, William Marshall, Strongbow, the Fitzgeralds. I just cannot remember them flying a French or British flag when occupying these territories. Do you?
No, no, and the funny thing is, when they went to war, if whatever heraldry they were wearing was their own personal heraldry.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
oh
And
boy.
I was talking about this the other day, and don't get me wrong, most sane English people understand William Marshall had no understanding of nationalism, right? William Marshall never actually identified himself in his own lifetime as being English. No, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. From a
Yeah.
nationalist perspective, they do identify the fact that William Marshall is the greatest English knight who ever lived. Okay, it's that I do this. I've disagreed with that.
Is
And
he? Is he?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's such a hard question. What is English in the 12th/13th century? Like, what
Mm,
actually counts as English in that era?
yeah,
That's a really hard question to actually answer because if you go by language, well, the leaders are not speaking English.
yes,
Um, if you go by culture, well, what in the 12th or 13th century, what makes you English versus French, or what defines Englishness? It's that is you that is
yeah.
a bottomless pit, probably, that has no answer.
Oh, big time.
So
Especially when you have William Marshall, who spent the majority of his life within the kind of undue kind of Frankish
right.
realm. And he moved
Mhm.
between the courts of Normandy, Paris,
Yeah.
Anjou. He was a well-traveled man in France with kind of French nobles. Like, he spent most of his life with French nobles before getting into his old age, and then moving and living in Kilkenny in Ireland and married to an Irish princess. Okay.
Right.
And then in that, when he was going to the different courts, he was then a part of the Anglo-Irish clique of the Bergs, Fitzgeralds. He no longer kind of associated himself with King John's court. Why? Because he was kind of having a feudal disagreement with King John. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. Did he end up fighting on the side of King John? Yeah, when he took his son hostage, which is very important to highlight. Like a lot of people are very quick to highlight that. Oh, he came to the rescue of England, and it's like, well, his son was hostage,
I
and
mean,
then
yeah.
yeah, and then when King John did die, what was it called? William Marshall needed to protect his lands in Wales, so he against the French and nobles that had switched to the side of the French king. Okay, so he had his reasons for taking that side. Regardless, the reason why I highlight this example is one of many examples of how things are actually complicated rather than people taking the cause of nationalism, which is very important to take when we look into these Norman invasions going into Ireland, that these people are not flying a what was it called, St. George's flag or a Union
Yeah.
flag or any sort of flag when they're invading into Ireland. Like, these families, such as the Fitzgeralds, such as the De Clares, these families are invading Ireland because they see an opportunity with a civil
Yeah.
war that was happening in Ireland between the O'Connors and the MacLachlan's, which very much greatly weakened the O'Connors
Yeah.
and the MacLachlan's, which allowed opportunities not just for native Gaelic Irish to take advantage of, to seize more opportunity on land, but even more so, the what was it called, as Professor I apologize for this one. Flanagan has highlighted in a new book, the Anglo Normans. It has given the Anglo Normans the opportunity to seize and capture lands, and this is the important part, as mercenaries to an
Yeah.
Irish lord. Okay,
I,
so an
I,
Irish lord has hired mercenaries, not realizing that this would open an opportunity for even the King of England, Henry II, to exploit and take advantage of for his own
yeah.
opportunity, and also to take the topic away from the fact he just murdered Thomas Becket. um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I view, I think people, if you want to put it in terms that a lot of modern people might sadly understand, they were the venture capitalists of their age, right?
yes.
Like they looked at Ireland as an economic, financial opportunity,
Mm,
basically. It's just that back then venture capitalism involved more physical violence, whereas now it involves financial violence and
mhm.
human resources violations. So
Yes.
yeah, it was, yeah, no one, yeah. I this increasing yearning for this national identity and to impose our national narrative on other people, or to force them to acknowledge a national narrative that is mostly invented, is dangerous. Right? They are weaponizing history for purposes that are not noble. we're
Mm-hmm.
not we're not celebrating the Norman invasion because of, the good it did for the world, or the good it did for the Anglo-Saxons, right? Like, we're celebrating the Norman invasion as France because we want to show we're powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But Kevin brings up a very good point as well. Like Diarmid MacMurrough had hired them in as mercenaries, and eventually somebody was going to hire them in, or eventually the Normans, these French
yeah.
knights, were going to find a way into Ireland regardless. Yeah, I fully agree with you, Kevin.
Oh yeah,
Like this
absolutely.
this change was coming. It's just our modern interpretation is a bit mental now, where we're branding these people, these old French nobles, as British invaders. Like this is just a full-on modern interpretation. So this is why I'm actually quite excited for Maria Theresa Flanagan, who is a professor, and her book Strongbow in Ireland and the Anjou Empire. I'm excited about this because there has been previous books that have come out to bring up this conversation. One of which was by Sean. Oh, I don't want to butcher his name now. Just give me a second. Um, Sean O'Haraver, who brought out the book The Medieval Irish Kings and the English Invasion. Okay. Um, and also on top of that as well, you also have Sean Duffy, Professor Sean Duffy from Trinity University. His book is also, I don't know if it's out yet or it's coming out this year, because that book has been changing dates as more changes has come in. But he's coming out with the book as well, Invasion 1169. So you can tell straight away that a lot of academics have a lot to say, and for good reason, especially when you have conversations inside of the Irish Parliament, where the likes of political parties,
Ooh.
like Sinn Féin, for example, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, have a very nationalist perspective. Like when remember, this is quite funny because France wants to give Ireland a lot of money to celebrate these occasions and stuff, right?
Wait,
And
wait. They really want to give Ireland money to host a big celebration
yes,
about the Norman the Norman invasion, the Norman adventure
yes,
to Ireland.
yes, 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 big grants. The
Oh,
French, the French want Ireland to
oh.
celebrate the connection between Ireland and France. So it's very interesting the French interpretation of the
The
invasion of Ireland.
connection,
Yeah,
the connection, huh?
yes, yes,
Oh,
yes. They see this
oh,
as a big celebration of Strongbow coming onto the island.
and so, just how are the Irish reacting to this generous offer?
They're paying us to celebrate the British invasion of Ireland of 1169. That's how the
Oh,
Irish Parliament was reacting. What was it
oh
called?
my God.
Um, the Irish
Times.
History Podcast was talking about this. Now, don't get me wrong, the Irish History Podcast was telling people, look, nationalism did not exist in this period of 1169. Like, none of these people have any understanding of flying the colours and, this is a fight for Ireland. No, these people, the only thing these people cared about was their king groups, their clans, and their family dynasties. Like, when Strongbow came into the island and he married an Irish princess, which was Aoife, the only thing he cared about was capturing a whole load of land for the new dynasty he was setting up in Ireland.
Yeah.
He did not care about any nationalism. Now, don't get me wrong. Henry II then uses this as an excuse because although Strongbow is actually a Cambro Norman, he's a knight of the Welsh Marches, as he was referred to back in the, 1160s. Henry II, he sees all of the property of Wales as his property. So when he sees this Cambro Norman invading into England, especially one that had previously fought a war against him, he's like, hey, wait, technically speaking, that's one of my subjects. And also, I need to kind of get away from England at the time because a lot of people want to remove me, especially after the accident of Thomas Becket. So I
Yeah,
need to
such
quickly run away from the French and English court. Do you know what? I'll go to Ireland. I'll raise a massive military force in Wales and I'll invade Ireland. Okay. And that's what he does in around 1170, around 1172. So in 1172,
yeah.
so in 1169, you have what they refer to as the Cambro-Norman invasion, which is Strongbow's invasion, where Strongbow is, technically speaking, a mercenary for Diarmid MacMurrough, who is an Irish lord who took part in a civil war against the High King of Ireland. Now we have all these mercenaries coming in. And then Henry II, he feels he has the right then to invade Ireland, to put all these, what was it called, Normans under his leash again. So he invades then in 1172, okay? Now, these people invade for their own family reasons. However, the problem is now, which is causing all these arguments and debates, and why these academics need to, more now than ever, to write books to correct these statements that have been made in the Irish Parliament, is because of the actions that had taken place back in the medieval period, and now our modern interpretation of that.
Yeah, it's the politicization of history is always done for good reasons and disinterest and for the general public good. I always get a little queasy when history gets used in this way, honestly.
Yeah.
Instead of learning from the mistakes of history, we blow up these big conflicts and present them as some kind of moment of national glory. It's
Hmm.
like, wow, you don't understand the purpose of the study of history at all, do you? Not
Yeah.
even a little bit. Okay, great.
Oh, big time. And you see, this is the thing. What I find so funny is that a lot of people turn around and say, oh, there's no point in learning medieval history. No, 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 no. We need to learn medieval history so we know that we are not a part of medieval history to back in the medieval period, completely different interpretation to our own the way our modern world works today. And the biggest problem is from China, we're in Asia right now, Rachel, and you can see the
Yeah.
way a lot of people use what happened back in the medieval period to try to justify horrible things out here. And it's the same thing as I've clearly said there. Same thing happening in Britain or Ireland, where people are justifying actions that were taken by families for their own family reasons, are now justifying it from nationalist perspective. So very, very terrifying stuff. I like Simon's comment there. Simon turns around and says, "This is why King John was a just and fair king. He signed the Magna Carta, granting rights to his lords and their freedom of right. He was an amazing king." Yeah, 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 yeah,
he,
yeah.
he, 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 he did so completely free will, no pressure whatsoever. Good guy
Yeah.
all around. Yeah.
There wasn't two wars fought in Ireland alone leading up to the Magna Carta, which led up to the main war in England. I don't know how many wars were fought in England and France leading up to the First Barons' War, but there were already multiple wars leading up to the Magna Carta. Then you had the big war itself, the First Barons' War, and then it finally, King John was put on his own leash. Never mind putting all these other barons on the leash.
Yep. Yeah, and contrary to all the propaganda that we have in the American education system, Magna Carta was not a big step forward for the average person in England.
Yeah.
It was not.
Mhm.
It was rights for the barons. It wasn't rights for the everyday person.
Oh, and then Simon then expands on that again. He says, "We love the English. They always come over and make themselves feel at home." King John did, yeah. I love how King John. What period was that again? I think it's around 1120 when King John was having a disagreement with William Marshall, Hugh de Lacy, and there was another English knight in there as well. So an English knight runs over to Ireland and goes hiding out with the Anglo-Irish. And what was it called? King John first invites William Marshall over, right? And William Marshall ends up having his child kidnapped and taken as a hostage. And then he invades. So William Marshall is subjugated from the get go with King John's invasion of Ireland, and then he comes over with his siege equipment and he wrecks up Trim Castle, and then he marches up to Carrickfergus and wrecks up that as well, subjugating the what was it called, the Lacys, and then eventually he manages to the English noble he was chasing after, he manages to escape, but his wife was captured, and then his wife ends up being starved to death in King John's dungeon. So King
Oh,
John, big
right. Yeah,
guy.
I remember. Yeah, I remember hearing about that bit. Wasn't she the one? Was she the one who supposedly ate her son? Where the is that the case of starvation about
Yeah,
which you're talking?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Except that now the evidence is pointing to she didn't eat her son. It was actually rats that probably gnawed on him. Yeah.
Oh, I
But
didn't
she
hear
was
about that though.
yeah, but she was slandered. Yeah, I just listened to a whole lecture on
Yeah,
this
that's
a
the
month
one.
ago.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the evidence points to the kinds of wounds that are described on his body. She wasn't eating him. She they when they found them, she was holding him,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and and they're pretty certain that the gnawing marks that they found were rats that had just gnawed on them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's the case. I can't remember what her name is, but
I
that's the case because she was locked up with her son, and
yep
she was the one that slandered King John as well. When they were still in England, she was
yep
slandering King John, and then they ran off to Ireland, and she ends up, her and her son ends up getting captured. He escaped, but her and her son ends up getting captured, and King John starved them to death. So
yeah
that is, yeah, that's bang on the situation that led on to King John's. I suppose war in Ireland would be the right way to say it. Well, his campaign in Ireland, anyway, and that eventually then leads on to the Barons Wars because William Marshall, then the Anglo-Irish then are subjugated. Not only are Hugh de Lacy's wrecked up because of various sieges and stuff, and the Lacys had to do a runner to Scotland. They had to go and hide in both Scotland and in the O'Neill territories. So it really shows the complication relationship between the Anglo-Irish and the Gaelic at that time. That the Anglo-Irish, the ones that had fought against King John, except for William Marshall, a lot of them actually had to do a runner into Gaelic territories and go and hide with the Gaelic. Um, Interesting, nonetheless.
yeah.
Let me pop over to Kevin's other comment as well. I think it's actually a splendid idea. Strongbow was a true G for his real. Yeah, if I had the opportunity to be a mercenary, go to Ireland, and then take the kingship of Ireland, I'd do it as well.
Yes, yeah. and and so would a lot of other Irishmen. I mean, it's, this wasn't this wasn't the era of we must support our fellow Irishmen or our fellow Englishmen. It's not a thing.
And for everyone jumping in here, hey guys, how are y'all keeping? Hoping everyone is doing well. Yeah, everyone popping in there. Hope everyone is doing great today. Myself and Rachel are covering medieval news. We've just
Yeah,
covered three sets of news there. One of which was what was going on in Ireland just now with all these new academic books to do with the Norman invasion of Ireland. So definitely grab a hold of that as well. So basically, what I was saying there is that Professor Maria Theresa Flanagan is releasing her new book set for October 2027, Strongbow in Ireland and the Anjou Empire. So I really, really look forward to that one. Very exciting stuff for sure. Also, on top of that one, this morning, Rachel had also covered a wee bit on what was it called? It was Persian silk in
yeah,
Sweden, wasn't it?
Persian silk in 10th century Sweden. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
and
Yeah, so
also,
if
go on.
for those who are just joining, don't forget to like and subscribe. I am the creative Contessa, and Philip, the voice behind the tapestry,
Oh,
is Philip from Irish Medieval History. So make sure you check out both of our channels and like and subscribe. And if you're on a mobile device, liking is just as easy as double tapping the screen.
one second. That one completely funny there. I'll flip over. Actually, do you know what? I'll pop back over to this one. There we go. That looks much better. And also, moving on with the news, Rachel,
Yes.
what's the story with that little poem you were sending me yesterday? The one
Oh,
that's set during the
Finn.
7th century.
Yes, sixth century.
6th
So
century. Ah,
yeah,
6th century.
so Finnboeter is in legend in Norse mythology and Norse legend is the season that presages Ragnarok. Ragnarok, by the way, I just learned is the is Norse for Götterdämmerung, which means the twilight of the gods. So that is what Ragnarok is. And the Fimbulvetur is the season that presages that, the twilight of the twilight, so to say. And it's described as being a time in which the sun is basically swallowed and there's no summer, there's no weather. It's this terrible dark time. And archaeologists now actually think they're tracing that legend back to the series of eruptions in 536 that sent the world into a nuclear winter.
Mm.
Because this is another one of those parts, those big episodes in history that almost never gets talked about, just like the Justinian plague, actually, in world history / Western history. And so they're now thinking that this episode in Norse mythology was actually basically written to understand, was composed, was created to understand this event that
Mm.
happened in the 530s when the world went dark, right? When it got cold, when the weather went crazy, because these massive volcanoes erupted and basically unleashed a kind of nuclear winter across the planet. And so that's, it's always very exciting when you can pinpoint events in a legend, in mythology, to an actual global event. And in this case, archaeologists are and scholars, I'll say scholars and archaeologists, are pretty certain that they can tie the creation of this myth to that event, which also contributed to the downfall of the Western Roman Empire, right?
Yeah.
It didn't help things along, and then the Justinian plague kind of put the kibosh on any any further action in that regard. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's quite exciting, all right, because I remember covering this back in what was it called? Third year in University College of Cork, when I was going for my degree and stuff back in 2018, and they were covering apocalypse views and themes, and one of which it was very interesting, as you pointed out there, the kind of nightness and this, frozen, icy, dark age that would come in and wipe out the population, and also this interpretation of a kind of frozen hell that people will be sent to hell,
right.
and instead of a burning brimstone hell, they will be sent to a frozen hell. So it's very interesting in the literature and stuff that we see this kind of interpretation coming in. And I remember Professor Katrina in University College of Cork, who specializes in linguistic studies in Old Irish, highlighted the fact that it always pops in from this kind of interpretation anytime you have an event that happens that pretty much scars the mind of people, and it becomes this kind of echoing scar in people's minds that's brought
Right.
down, inherently brought down from mother to child and then child to the next one, and it's literally brought down about this this thing happened, and eventually it becomes this thing of, it could come again, it could come back again. So it's
Right.
interesting how this kind of interpretation comes into the literature and the poetry and stuff, that is feeling that this emotion or this event, this calamity might return once again.
Yeah, they actually, believe it or not, there is lumber, there's lumber that has survived from that time. And so they can actually look at the tree rings, and the tree rings from those years, there's almost no growth in the
Mm,
trees. Like the tree rings are so minimal as to be almost imperceptible, metaphorically speaking. Obviously, they perceived them, but they're very, very little in the way of tree growth for several years. So that's, kind of the evidence of this big weather, this climate calamity. And then the kind of the about the time, it's about this time that this legend can be traced to.
mm,
So yeah, it is. It would be. I know what I didn't read in this article. Now that I think about it, it would be very interesting to look at the mythologies of other places around the planet, and or the legends, the stories, even the histories, and see what they say about that time, or if they
mm.
have similar icy apocalypses
Yeah.
instead of fiery. As you said, instead of a fiery apocalypse, it's an icy apocalypse.
Yes, and that's quite interesting as well, because myself, and just one moment there, because the comment section there is just looking for the sources for this. So I'll just that's into the comment section now because Rachel sent me the source for this last night,
Yeah.
which was from medievalist
Dot
.net.
net. Yep.
The link there is in the comment section. So definitely check that out. And if there's any other sources as well, I have all the sources here, guys. So if there's any other sources that you guys are after for what we were discussing today, definitely ask me and I'll post it into the comment section there. But it's very interesting as well because myself and the wife were talking about this last night over dinner about the different interpretations of the apocalypse, and one of which was the Asian apocalypse because you can always see tsunamis, the big waves of water appearing, especially in Okinawa where we are. There's always this massive fear, and these fears are justified from the interpretation of me and my wife. Even now, like one of the biggest fears that we have right now in Okinawa is the fear of this big, massive tsunami coming in and wiping out,
Oh, yeah.
myself. And you can see that in the mythology. The mythology is always linking back, and there's also so many gods and goddesses linked to tsunamis, mythologies linked to tsunamis, all
Right.
around this whole area. And to me, it's very, very justified. Like even the whole idea of praying. There's so many different sea gods in Okinawa, for
Yeah.
every single phase of the sea.
Yeah.
Like
Korea,
there's
Korea, Korea, Korea has a lot of sea gods also.
yeah,
Gods, goddesses. Like there's entire sea kingdoms. There's there's and we're in the Pacific Rim, right? That's where we
mm,
are. So there
yeah,
is. We think about the tsunami in 2004 that wrecked South
mm,
Asia. I
yeah,
mean, if you go even to this day, if you go to South Asia, you can find places that are still completely wrecked because of the horror of that tsunami. 2011, Fukushima, right,
yes,
where we had a nuclear meltdown.
yeah.
For
Oh,
God's sake.
terrifying.
I mean, Jesus, if you watch the footage from either of those, it's pee your pants kind of stuff, right? So yeah, there's a good reason that here in this part of the world, you're right. It's the world ends in a watery cataclysm, right?
Mm. Oh yeah, you're over in Indonesia as well. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have that. She's just pointing out there that Indonesia, obviously dominated by a Muslim majority, still feed the sea god, the folklore side of things. Like so, the folklore in Indonesia, as we're both aware of, well, all three of us are aware of, also very very strong within what was it called, Malaysia and Indonesia today. And I can imagine, like, I'd love to sit down and study their mythology and history and folklore as well, because they spread all the way from Madagascar all the way over to Papua New Guinea. And there's also a theory recently, well, it's not a theory, it's been there for quite some time now, since the 1800s. It's trying to find solid proof of it, but they believe that they may have stretched over to South America as well, because if you listen to the language, people from Indonesia, this is funny, Rachel, I don't know if you're aware of this one, but people, I have a friend as well from Indonesia, and he can talk to the native tribes in South America. He can understand to a certain degree what they're saying. So there definitely is some kind of
Hmm.
linguistic influence going on with the native tribes of South America, all the way up to Indonesia. Like he can pretty much,
Well, I mean, it's
although go on,
it's not hard necessarily to get from Indonesia to South America via the Pacific Ocean, right? I
yeah,
mean, that's
I'll
it's. I'm
interpret
not
that.
saying I'm not saying it's like super easy, but it's not impossible, right? It's not
Yeah,
beyond. We don't have to introduce aliens to make that feasible, is what I'm
yeah.
saying. So yeah, I could completely believe that.
Yeah, look, and the Indonesian and Malaysian trade empire is so interesting because it wasn't an empire of land grabbing; it was an empire of ports. So what you would do is that to become a part of this kind of confederation of ports is that you were supposed to pay your tribute. If you didn't pay your tribute, then this big massive fleet would come over and physically take their tribute. So it was like ultimately the Malaysian Indonesian Confederation Empire was more of an empire of ports rather than going inland and grabbing the land and stuff, because sometimes because the land, a lot of these islands and stuff is very junglish, it was very difficult to actually occupy and dominate the islands themselves. So a lot of the times these areas dominated by ports. So like the medieval history of Indonesia and Malaysia, so interesting, but because it's an empire, well, a confederation of ports, You can imagine a whole load of mythology and folklore,
Mm.
definitely to do with sea creatures. And you can even imagine. I haven't looked at their apocalypse, but I can imagine that their apocalypse does revolve around what's it called, tsunamis as well.
Yeah, for certain. I mean, we get typhoons here too. So we've
Yeah.
got we've got water cataclysm from below and water cataclysm from above. So
Hmm.
yeah, I could
This
definitely
one,
see that.
this one's an interesting question as well. Of Susan, are there volcanoes erupting in the area that causes tsunamis? I do think that's the case in Ask My Wife, and all back into the conversation again. When it comes down to volcanoes, maybe Rachel knows this from Korean perspective because you enjoy reading a lot of Korean history. You're not just to make it clear to everyone. Rachel is not a professor in Korean studies yet, but do you know of any volcano apocalypse scenario or mythology around that?
Mm. So the only real volcano in Korea is Jeju Island. Volcanoes are
Mm,
those islands down there. So it's not really so much mainland Korea. It's down in the islands. And I haven't really, interestingly, I've not encountered any volcano-based mythology. Um,
yeah.
yeah, they have mountain gods. Like Korea is full of mountains. So every mountain has a god and a goddess, for instance. And when Buddhism came in, Buddhism just kind of laid down on top of that. So
Yeah.
they kept the system of believe of sort of this animist system of believing that everything has a god or a goddess or a spirit, either in control of
Mm,
it or governing it, and Buddha just kind of sits on top of that. So you've got Buddha at the top of this hierarchy of gods and goddesses and demigods and demons and whatnot. But that didn't, it isn't really until Christianity comes along that people stop to believe in the gods and goddesses of the mountains. So
mm,
even to this day, you have some people who still believe in the gods and goddesses of the mountains, um,
yeah.
but but not so much volcano gods. But we've got every mountain, including every volcano, has a god or a goddess in charge of it for certain. But I haven't
Yeah.
heard of any legends that involve a cataclysmic end in magma, for instance.
Yeah, yeah. It is
I
fascinating. I'm just asking it over to the comment section. Comment section asks, did you already mention Kleena, the Irish sea goddess? We haven't covered that one. Is she connected to any tsunami apocalypse? Because I do know that going into the early medieval period, from God bringing his apocalypse and stuff, that there is tales and stories revolving around tsunamis, and if you annoy God enough, he'll send you out. So I assume that may have had roots as well with the old, what we refer to as Irish Celtic paganism in Ireland. So if she has connections to tsunamis, yeah, definitely comment below. Bum, bum, bum. Clean the Irish side is connected to mythology to do with the Blarney Stone. She's connected to the Blarney Stone, the oath of the cap. Is she? Thought the Blarney Stone popped up in the 13th century. I could imagine there is, especially with the Onocta and stuff. But anyway, we're
I mean,
flying
there's
off.
there's there's a lot of holy and or mythical magical relics that pop
Oh,
up at
yeah,
about that time everywhere.
yeah, mm,
I'm
mm,
I'm thinking the Shroud of Turin, for instance.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
that, that seems to have been a pretty popular pastime in the Middle Ages, was inventing magical, mythical, or god related objects.
Mm, mm, mm.
Otherwise known
Yeah,
as relics.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, returning back into the Vikings and stuff. Yeah, the Silk Road was definitely something. If you
Yeah.
guys can see the picture up on top there, that is our understanding right now on the Silk Road. Okay, and that's quite important to the conversation. Why is it so important to the recent conversations that are happening in the wider academic world from recently talks that have been going on from Beijing, Hong Kong,
Mhm.
and Tokyo all the way to London? Well, recently there's been recent discussions and talks about the Silk Road. And the thing is, back in our kind of classic understanding, we always just imagine the Silk Road going from Beijing all the way over to Constantinople, and that was it. Kind of just that one kind of straight line. However, over and this kind of Silk Road just made of of these caravans just full of silk
Right.
garments and stuff. Marching on by itself all the way over to the other side. When in reality, this story is far more complicated, and we've
It,
started to have bigger, wider conversations about and stuff about how this, technically speaking, would have functioned during the medieval period.
right. And I think it's important. I actually read something very recently that I think is important for people to consider. Not the Silk Road, Silk Roads, plural.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
There isn't one. There is not one single one. There wasn't a singular one. There were roads, plural, mostly determined by geography. um, there were the waterways and there were the overland routes. But also, one of the biggest myths about this, I think, is first off, everyone in the comments, when you think of the Silk Road, what springs to
Mm,
mind? I'd be interested to hear what you all have to say about that, because and what is your understanding of what the Silk Road was? So go ahead and pop that in the comments for us, because I'm always interested to know about what people already know, what they understand, what their conceptions are.
mm,
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings of this road is that it's a one-way route,
yeah.
right? People think that, and that it's a one object route. Silk
Mm,
went west, nothing
yes.
went east, right?
Yes.
And that is, nothing could be further from the truth. But the thing that really went east, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, do you know what the number one commodity that the West, that Europe was basically sending eastward?
Oh, can I be biased and just say wool from my side? No.
Slaves.
Oh yes.
Slaves.
Okay, that's very, very
Slaves.
interesting.
It's like
Yeah.
first millennium Silk Road, the primary good that
Mm,
Europe had, that the East wanted, because the East, I'm going to be honest, everyone, the East was way more advanced than the
mm,
West in the
yes.
in the first millennium BC, in the first millennium AD, BCE, ACE, however you want to reckon time.
Mm,
The East was just so much more advanced. They, in every way, in almost every way, they were more advanced. So they had all the luxury goods.
mm,
But what Europe had was people. And
yeah.
so the slave trade was massive. And so the primary commodity that Europe was sending, and this is something they don't teach in school. They didn't teach
Yeah.
me this in school anyway. In high school, certainly not. They didn't teach me that the thing that we, the Europeans, the 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 home of democracy and liberality, that our primary commodity that we were selling in the first millennium was slave labor. And the great ports, Dublin, big slave
Yes.
port; Utrecht,
Yes.
big slave port;
Mm,
Venice, big slave port; Prague, big overland slave trading post, right? So those cities became big and powerful because of the slave trade.
the
So
the comment
yeah.
section hitting the nail on the head there. Look, by the way, guys, the comments are absolutely magnificent right now. Definitely keep feeding them in there. Loads of stuff for myself and Rachel to now discuss and stuff. But from my perspective, and it's something I want to start highlighting for the rest of my life, really. And we don't talk about enough is the fact that Ivor the Bonus, how much Ivor the Bonus contributed to the Silk Road. As I was saying, me and Rachel opened up this discussion where earlier we look at the Viking Age as just raiding. Ivor the Bonus and Olaf the White, he went to Ireland and his predecessor Turgis was killed by Mael Shocknall I. Why wasn't Ivor the Bonus and Turgis killed as well? Why? Because they came to Ireland and set up a protection racket to protect trade in the
Yep.
Irish sea, right? So that whole Irish Sea now under Viking, Norwegian, well, soon pretty much Hiberno Scandinavian control. Not only did the Vikings go and bring their ships to for raiding, but now they were giving their ships and pretty much setting up marriage alliances. They were
Yep.
switching hostages, and also they were fostering their children between each other as well. So they would have that shared link. So then Ivor the Bonus and Mael Shocknall I would have a trusted connection. Well, Mael Shocknall I would promise not to attack Ivor the Bonus if he and his ships then set up a protection racket in that area to protect the trade route that was connected to the Silk Road, that was bringing Ireland into an economic golden age, which we do not talk about enough. Okay. And this is very important because right now, even our interpretation of the Mongolian Empire, when people think of the Mongolian Empire, they just think of Genghis Khan taking over
Right.
large swathes of land. That's not actually the reality. In fact, he did some of the settlements that agreed to his protection racket didn't even get touched. And I'll highlight that again, a protection racket. This was not a claim of all this big open land. It was there to protect the trade routes
Yep.
going from one settlement to the other. His empire was an empire of a protection racket.
It was an economic, it was a trade empire, right?
Yeah,
I think that's the part that, again, but that's not sexy, right? Like a
yeah.
trade. That's why it's not clickbait, right?
Mm,
It wasn't clickbait in the Middle Ages when the historians were writing about it. Then, like
yeah.
even the medieval chroniclers didn't want to write that about the Mongols, right?
Yes.
So even back then, it wasn't clickbait
Mm,
because a trade empire just doesn't have the same violent sex appeal that
yeah.
an empire of blood and fire,
Mm,
right? Like that's and Netflix knows that too, by the way.
yeah. And the thing is that needs to be highlighted is the fact that the reason why we have to fear these people, not just in the period itself, but also today, why this fear from Ivor the Bonus and Genghis Khan still is in our minds today, is because they want, through that propaganda, wanted you to fear their names because they did
Yep.
not want you to touch their trade moving from Beijing all the way over to Dublin. They did not want you touching that. If you touch that, oh boy, they would capture you, and they had to send a message throughout the rest of the entire Silk Road. Pretty much the
Yep.
whole world needed to know that you suffered because you touched their money, you know?
Yep.
So this is not an empire of land. This is an empire of a trade, what was it called? Oh, what's the word I'm using? Protection racket. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
a protection racket empire, not a land empire. Okay.
But the reality is, and this is something that we modern people don't want to admit. And I mean, it makes me a little queasy to say this, but it's true. It created peace for everyone, right?
Yes.
It created it created a situation in which malfeasors, people, bad actors were punished, and
Mm,
therefore people generally behaved much more without than before the protection racket. There's
yeah.
this now there's a legend that says, and how true it is debatable. But there's a legend that says that in the Mongol trade protection racket, the Mongol Empire, a naked woman could walk from one end to the other unharassed,
Mm,
right? So that's now again, take that with a little grain of salt, but I think it was still conveying an idea that was true.
yes.
So, it wasn't these trade rackets were actually the better option for everyone. It created, and that's what created that massive burst of prosperity in medieval Asia, and
Mm,
in what we would call late medieval Asia. They wasn't their Middle Ages; it was just an age for them, but was
yes.
medieval for us in the West, right? And that's what led to that prosperity that allowed all of those goods to be traded. And you could even argue, you could make an argument that that's what set Europe up on the path to
Mm,
be on a path towards its own ascendancy, because now goods could easily, much more easily, get from east to west and west to east. Opening up the door basically for Europe to get back on track. Kind of
mm,
gotten
mm.
derailed a little bit for a while.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? It slightly dipped, but I suppose it depends where you were within the Silk Road and stuff, especially the way
Yeah.
that we're thinking about these days. Because in the early medieval period, the thing about the Silk Road of that period is that they pretty much went around Europe. If you're looking at the Viking Silk, well, the connection between the Viking trade paths and the Silk Road is that it went from Scandinavia to Dublin, then dropped down into what was called the Iberian Peninsula, wrapped
Right.
around the Mediterranean of the Caliphate, right? So majority of that trade is going around the Caliphate, which is North Africa. Okay, so in
Yeah.
the early medieval period, the Caliphate is in its golden age of Islam. Really important stuff. And then it makes
Yeah.
its way from the Caliphate into over to Baghdad, and then from Baghdad,
Oh,
then with
Baghdad.
the protection rackets that was the Seljuk Turks were setting up around that whole area as well,
Yep.
protecting the goods going from Jerusalem over to Baghdad, and then from Baghdad over to India. And then this goes back into someone's earlier comment. Someone was asking us then the connections then that contributed to the Akbar, which is the I apologize for butchering that, by the way. The oh my god, oh, our favorite city, the Ultra City.
Samarkand.
Uh,
Samarkand.
no,
Wait. Which?
no,
Which?
just
Which?
over the Ultra City.
Ultra. Oh. Angkor Wat. Angkor.
Yes, Angkor Wat. That's the
I mean, the
one.
Wat. The Wat is the temple. Angkor. Angkor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was it? Modern day Cambodia.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. So modern day
The Khmer. The
Cambodia, which
Khmer. The
has
Khmer. The Khmer Empire. Yeah. You're thinking of the Khmer
yes,
Empire.
yes, yes. As Susan had brought up in the comment section earlier, and then from Angkor Wat, which, by the way, became an ultra city, right?
Yeah.
Which was even because of the connections with all that trade going on. Not only do we have this really prosperous, great empire that was kicking off with the Indonesian and Malaysians going from what was it, Madagascar, over all the way over to Papua New Guinea,
Right.
which was a confederation of ports, but that then brought it over to Angkor Wat, and then from there we have that trade going into China and stuff. So as you were highlighting there, Rachel, there's so many multiple paths that
Yeah.
start to appear as well. China, Beijing as well on the other side, very right now for their anniversary and all these big massive talks that they're having in Beijing, London. China really put their foot down, and they wanted the statue. Sorry, they have a statue from the early medieval period, and it's a horse trampling on a nomad. And it's meant to symbolize the fact that they dominated and took over the steppes. China did control that with their own protection racket. So they have a symbol of them dominating the Silk Road with a Chinese man on a horse trampling
I
a
mean,
nomad.
that's a pretty bold move for someone who was conquered by the Mongols and has an entire dynasty that was a Mongol
Oh,
dynasty. That's a that's that's a ballsy move, China.
oh
talk about
my.
talk about rewriting your own damned history, man.
But it's interesting as well because Japan, I myself and my wife as well went to an expedition in what was it called, up around Nagoya as well last week, and it wasn't focusing on the Silk Road itself, but it was talking about trade going from Indonesia, Malaysia, and also China into Japan. And it was highlighting the fact that it was the outside world that had brought horses to Japan in the early medieval period, which is very interesting. I thought there was horses already in Japan in the ancient world. I didn't realize that horses only came into Japan in the early medieval period. And then the symbol of a horse becomes really represented. It becomes this kind of high status for the nobles. If anybody has studied Japanese history, they would know that the samurai doesn't start off as a kind of infantry on the ground with his spear and his samurai sword, that originally he was actually cavalry with his bow. And so the cavalry becomes a massive high status for the Japanese. And the fact that they have to import this horse in shows their status with the bigger, wider world. And then you would see this further still with all the Chinese silk that these samurai of the early medieval period would be covered from
Mm.
head to toe. And they would do these big, massive, glorious, what was it called? I
Talking about the
suppose
banners.
yeah. That's the one I'm
Yeah.
talking about. The princess and as well. Everybody dressed up in their insanely beautiful
Yeah.
silk garments and stuff. I have all those photos, by the way, if you want to see any of that stuff, guys, over on Irish Medieval History on Instagram. So if you're interested in any of those photos and stuff, I can post up more as well if you're interested in that stuff over on Instagram. I have my video up and everything on that one. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, for some reason, I was saying this to Rachel as well. I did up the video of that, talking about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the video yet, Rachel, of that.
I have. Yeah, it's great. I thought it was great. But, as you said, the algorithm punished you because it's not
Yeah,
Irish medieval history.
yeah. What the
Yeah.
hell? But
And to that rude miscreant who called me dim earlier, I understand the difference, and Philip understands the difference between the algorithm and people. Yes, the algorithm should be informed by people,
yeah,
but it is not always informed correctly, actually, which is why the algorithm ends up showing me crap I have no interest in seeing because it's
uh,
not right. Because just because it picks up what people are watching on doesn't mean it is actually what people want to watch,
mm,
believe it or not. Yeah, no, the algorithm, anytime I've tried to do anything, like if I tried to do just modern cooking
yeah,
on my Creative Contessa channel, it would shut me down.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm
And
trying to do cooking on my travel channel, and which is travel cooking. Like cooking food is a big part of travel, right? So
mm,
demonstrating recipes from across the world should be travel relevant, but it's not. So I get shut down hard. Yeah,
okay,
I thought
guys,
the video. I
yeah,
thought the
go on.
video was great.
I think it was quite nice as well, but
Yeah.
straight away from the get go, it was shut down. Right, guys, if you're going to be abusive in the comment section, I'm going to quickly block you out of it. I don't understand why you need to, like, did your mother not hug you this morning or what? What's the crack like? Also, on top of that, as well, guys, what was it called? Just for anybody who didn't see that, people in the comment section are just sending abusive comments for absolutely no reason, to be honest with you. So I'm just kicking them off. It's not even a thing of them disagreeing with what we're saying. They're just outright calling, what was it, us names in the comment section. So I'm just kicking them off. And also, on top of that, guys, just for my followers as well, just be careful for what you're posting up as well. Lads, what the hell? Did your mother not love
Oh,
you? Right, well, I'm blocking a
yeah,
few more.
probably not.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, Philip, there are a lot of men out there who are threatened by women who are educated and charismatic and can speak coherently. So it's
yeah,
okay. They're just showing that their genitalia are apparently sadly undersized, and that, yes, as you say, their mothers didn't hug them when they were little. Wah
yeah.
wah.
Yeah, I don't like. Clearly, they're chucking in words to get around, but I can see that, and I'm just kicking you off. There's no need, unless you're talking about the silk. I don't. If you guys disagree with our interpretation of the Silk Road, fair enough. Have no problems with that one. But just coming in here and being abusive, like what the hell? What else was
Mm.
I? Oh yeah, and also on top of it, guys, were you guys what was it called? No, we haven't seen Shogun yet. You guys have been asking us to cover Shogun.
Shogun,
I
Shogun.
will. Myself and the wife will sit down and watch Shogun. And there's also a few other stuff as well. I'd love to get my wife's opinion because my wife, when it comes down to Japanese history, and especially archaeological wise, wow, my wife is insanely switched on and has a very deep opinion about Japanese archaeology. She's definitely the queen of it, and especially clothing and stuff. She wants to make a video with me, well, not my wife is very shy. She doesn't like being in front of the camera, but she does want some of her work to be chucked in for a video to do with a video game to cover Japanese history and stuff because she wants to rant on that for a bit. But she doesn't want to be in the video. She's always like, "Oh, can you do A, B, and C?" And I'm like, "Will you be in the video?" And she's like, "No, no, I'm not being in the video." She's very, very shy. But
Yeah, see, at least I've convinced Ryan to be in the videos. Yeah, tell Yuki if Ryan has to be in the videos, she has to be in the videos.
No, she's no. I swear, she's such a switched on, intelligent woman, but she will not be in any of the videos and stuff. And sometimes she'll do an entire short, and I'm like, I have to credit for you for this, and I have put in her credits for this, and she's like, no, don't put my name down for that. Then people will look me up, and I'm like, but that's the whole point. They're meant to know who made that work and stuff. Yeah, she's insanely shy. She does not like being on Facebook or anything. Anyway, just one other comment as well. I just want to post in as well because I've seen a few really, really good comments. But just be careful of the algorithm. Sometimes the algorithm will see certain words and just kick you and ban you off. So make sure you're careful at what you post inside the comment section. Remember, Big Brother is watching, so be really
Mm.
careful what you're posting in there. So if you do find yourself kicked off and banned there, that actually wasn't me. The only people I've kicked off and banned there were people who were just blatantly name calling. So I kicked them all off and banned all them. But if you find yourself kicked off because you said a naughty word or anything, just be careful of Big Brother, because I seen some brilliant, brilliant comments there. But there's a few key words in there that Big Brother may have turned around and went, not having any of that.
Yeah.
So make sure it's the same with myself. Myself and Kevin could literally bitch all day about the amount of times we've been slapped by Big Brother because of what we've said on a live stream and stuff. Oh, and Jim
Yeah,
as well. Jim's been slapped a few times as
it's
well.
it's it's remarkable how the abusive comments get through with no problem,
Well,
right?
they've been abusive for a time. Like Dim, for example, they could think Dim like so they're being very cute, But you're
Right.
right. It's the people, abusive people bending the rules, and yet it's
Yeah.
always the person who's ignorant to being abusive that gets punished.
Yeah.
That's just the game. Back to the old
Yeah.
Silk
Back.
Road. That's interesting as well because, and this is something I kind of want to start to make my whole life project, perhaps, is the fact that in the, what was it called? The talks and stuff that was happening in Tokyo and also in London as well, is that more English and also Japanese historians and academics as well want to highlight the Silk Road going into Dublin. And it's a shame we don't have more. Like, I know most of our academics right now are very pinned down with the talks that are happening in Norway and stuff. Sorry, with the Normans and stuff. But I personally would love to push up to my PhD and get more qualifications based on the Silk Road, especially to do with, as we were talking about before, the Vikings, as we've been talking about a whole load. But even the connection that the Fitzgeralds have going into the Silk Road, which, sorry, Rachel probably knows way more about at this point. 15th century Silk Road.
Yeah, so it's interesting, basically by the 15th century, the Silk Road is more or less done,
Mm,
just because the geopolitical situation in Asia has changed so drastically, right?
yeah,
The Ming shut shit down hard in the 15th
yeah.
century. Like they get the new Ming dynasty comes in and they are paranoid, they are xenophobic, the big treasure fleet, the voyage of discovery has just completed and just come back, and they've brought back giraffes from Africa, and possibly there's some theories that they went as far as the Americas.
Mm,
And they come back and there's a new emperor, and that emperor, the Ming emperor, is xenophobic and paranoid. He scuttles the fleet of discovery, sending it. These are massive giant ships that were built for
mm,
this, super, like, bigger than anything that Europe had ever built, even bigger than triremes, anything bigger. He scuttles them all, and he shuts the gates of China down, basically shuts down trade entirely. And that's kind of the beginning of the end for China. that's
oh
that's the
no.
start of its descent from ascendancy, because once you shut down once you once you shut off trade, you also shut off innovation,
Mm,
right? Because innovation is predicated on new ideas, on fresh perspectives, on some random object that some trader brings, and someone else looks at that and says, I can do something with this, right?
mm,
When you shut down, when you become xenophobic, when you turn inward instead of outward, you're automatically going to start losing your innovative advantage. You're going to lose your military advantage. You're going to lose your economic advantage. So, basically China shuts down. The Ottomans also kind of put the kibosh on things. They start imposing all kinds of crazy high taxes on goods coming through Constantinople. And of course, they take control of Northern Africa as well. So that actually forces Europe to look westward. Well, actually makes Portugal look southward. Portugal sails all the way around Africa and goes to India, right?
mm,
But the rest of Europe is like, well, I guess we can look westward, and that's what starts Europe on its real ascendancy, is
mm.
is the innovation that is required to do all of that. So by the 15th century, you don't. I would say you're not really talking about the Silk Road anymore. You're just talking about trade. And
Yeah.
the reality is that by the 16th century, a lot of things like silk, Europe at that point has basically its own native weaving production for silk. the
Mm,
best the best silks are coming out of Florence. And you want to hear the irony? By the 15th century, the Silk Road is definitely going eastward because the Ottomans are importing Florentine and Venetian silks like nobody's business.
that's funny.
Because yeah, because when I was at Topkapi Palace in October, I went specifically to the costume collection, to their historical Ottoman clothing collection, royal Ottoman clothing collection.
Mm.
And I'm looking at some of these 15th century and 16th century kaftans, and I'm thinking, wow, I have seen that fabric in museums in Florence. Oh, look at that. The fabric is Italian. So a lot of the fabrics are now being imported from the West by the 15th
Okay.
century.
That's so
So,
awesome.
right, yeah, almost a complete reversal at that point, and at least
Yeah.
in terms of the fabric and the wool. The finest quality wool in the world in the 15th century is being woven in Flanders, right?
Mm.
Is being woven in Flanders in Italy, right? That's where you're getting the really rich satin silk-like wools. So yeah, by the 15th century, where mostly the Silk Road is not really, it's changed. It's just completely changed. The goods that are being traded have changed. There's been a big power shift. People are starting to do less overland and more by ship.
Keep up with the comments, lads. Comments are absolutely magnificent right now. Just heading back up to, I was showing off a whole load of comments there. I'm just going to go back over these to answer some of these questions. Blue dye, the monks of Iona used in Ireland for the illustration manuscripts. One a very good example of that is the Book of Kells. Came from Afghanistan, am I right?
Yes.
Afghanistan to Iona in 500 AD. Is that possible?
That is absolutely possible, and you're absolutely right. So the blue, not dye is the wrong word. Dye is for fabric, pigment. So the pigment that they were using in all of the medieval illuminations, that was blue. The luxury blue was lapis lazuli, was ultramarine. And he's right. The primary mines, the mines with the best, and I think maybe even only ultramarine in our hemisphere, are in Afghanistan, edge of Pakistan, kind of that part of the world. And yes, absolutely. It was imported. It was part of that Silk Road trade, but it was also the ultimate luxury. Having blue pigment in your manuscripts or your paintings or your art that was ultramarine, and you can always tell the difference. Ultramarine, if you compare ultramarine to some other more native, locally available blue pigment, there's no comparison. Ultramarine is magically rich in saturation and the shades of blue that it can achieve. And so by putting blue in your manuscripts, it is literally like saying, look, I'm rich. I can afford to commission this amazing rich manuscript, because there were no Mercedes or Porsche in this era. So instead, kings and queens would endow these manuscripts and command that they use as much blue pigment as was possible in the respective era, which is, by the time have all of you seen, Philip, you've seen the typical depiction of the Virgin Mary, right?
Yes.
Like, what is the color of the garment she's generally wearing?
Blue, virgin
Big blue. Yes.
Royal
It's
blue.
not virgin, it's ultramarine blue. And that gets its start in about the 14th century, when the people, the rich, the wealthy Italians, commissioning these works in these churches and these town halls, they say, make it blue. Put as much blue as you can. Make everything blue. And so that's where we get the Virgin Mary being codified in this blue garment. Not about the humility for which Jesus stood. No. It's about this crazy expensive pigment that is imported from Afghanistan. Yeah. So if you start looking at medieval art, start looking for blue. You're going to see it in places you don't expect things to be blue, because like you'll see blue columns in buildings. It's like, why are the columns blue? Because of ultramarine.
Yes. Lads, please keep up these comments. The comments are brilliant stuff, so definitely keep them up. I'm going to start going through all of them now. If you guys are looking to make any agreements or do any projects, definitely message myself or Rachel. If you're looking to message myself, head on over to my Instagram at Irish Medieval History and send me an old message there. That's probably the fastest way to get a message across to me. Rachel, if anybody wants to contact you for any project work, what is the best way to contact you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm everywhere, guys. The Creative Contessa on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. No problem. I check messages in all of those venues. Yeah. And I also have a website, thecreativecontessa.com. So feel free to check that out.
So definitely check that out. Just remember, myself and Rachel, our time is super precious to us. So definitely message us. We'll come to some kind of agreement because our time right now is super, super precious, and we have tons of projects that we need to get done, especially to make a living and stuff. So our time right now is super, super precious. So please send us a message. We'll negotiate something, especially with how important our time is. Because right now I have a ton of War of the Roses projects that I need to get done for this week and stuff. And Rachel needs to get a ton of projects finished for this Friday as well. So make sure to message us. We'll come to some kind of agreement beforehand. And yeah, definitely get in contact with us for sure if you have any projects and stuff you want to get smashed out. Another brilliant comment there off Susan. Has any archaeological or has any archaeology of the discovery of ships been found in China? Rachel, you were talking a little bit about ships there.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah. There is a lot of archaeology of ships in and
Mhm.
around. So the South China Sea,
Yeah.
the Indian Ocean,
Oh,
the sort of the bodies of water that kind of perambulate around southern Asia. Yeah,
yeah.
lots of amazing archaeology. Entire merchant ships that went down, and I'm not talking about the scuttled fleet of Discovery, but entire merchant ships that went down because of the storms that
Mhm.
perennially rotate through those waters, where they've actually found in perfectly preserved crates of porcelain, of pottery, of foodstuffs, of luxury fabrics, of luxury goods. Yeah, there's a lot of good archaeology that has been happening in that part of the world. Now, here's part of the problem with archaeology in China and North Korea is that you can't necessarily rely on the accuracy of the reports that are being put out because
Mm.
unfortunately archaeology in China is government funded and the government has a real propaganda angle, like
Oh,
harder. I mean, every country does. I'm not criticizing them in general, but China's propaganda angle is really hard.
mm.
It's real steep. So you can't necessarily, can kind of hard to sometimes get to the truth
Mm.
of the things they're actually uncovering. Yeah, I've been talking to some of my Korean colleagues here, Dr. Minji Kim, for instance, and we were talking about the archaeology reports that are coming out of China, for instance, for what we call medieval goods.
Mm.
And she said, yeah, I said, how trustworthy are they? She said, they're not.
Oh, mm.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
This can be the problem as well. Just between us and the old chat there, yeah, I see the same problem happening with the Japanese universities as well, where sometimes they're doing archaeological digs and they'll take it from a certain, their agenda, our, angle and stuff. But at the same time, between us and the chat and everyone else, a lot of universities have done this in the past where,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
coming at this from their own agenda and stuff. So, yeah, it does not surprise me. Quickly moving on. People always talk about how strange it is that China at the time could have done more. Rachel, we were talking about the Ming Dynasty just there as well. Why did the Ming Dynasty go about, what happened there with the Ming Dynasty? Why did they
Yeah,
become
I mean, so I am much more an expert on European history than I am on Asian history. However, from
Yeah.
my understanding from having lived in Asia for a lot of the last 11 years and studied the history because I want to understand the history of the place I live, you know, China, the Ming dynasty, it's all about xenophobia, right? The Ming emperor, he's paranoid.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like the things his predecessor was doing. He fears what that could mean for his empire, the kingdom of the middle, as it's referred to in if you translate its name in
Mm.
every language that I know in Asia, um, and so he shuts everything down, and that's where it ends. Because if you
Mm.
look at like the Tang Dynasty,
Yeah.
and I think for people who aren't familiar with Asian history, but are familiar with European history, it would be useful as a comparison to view China as the Roman Empire of Asia.
Yes. Mm.
Like there's so many similarities also in terms of rise and fall and decadence, right? So China has the impact on Asia that Rome has on Europe.
Yes.
linguistically, culturally, law, philosophy, religion, all of it. And so in the first millennium is the real height of China's innovation and actually social power too. So the Tang Dynasty is like maximum innovation time,
Mm.
and that's when almost every kingdom or polity in Asia is a client of the kingdom of the middle of Tang Dynasty China, and but it's not a violent clientele. It's predicated on economics, on trade. And so, the Tang Dynasty just innovates so many of the things that we claim as European were actually innovated in the Tang Dynasty.
Mm.
So, that's if China had not shut down in the 15th century and looked inward, we would be looking at a completely different world history, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that we can see these same problems starting to appear today. But I'll cut myself off very, very quickly before we get into trouble, and we'll quickly move on. Very good comment as well. Not only were foods and goods transported through the Silk Road, but also ideas and religion, such as Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and, oh, I can't pronounce that one, big massive one for religion, plus philosophy. Even,
Zoroastrianism, or
yeah,
I can't.
that's the one. That is the
Zoroastrianism,
one.
yeah.
I always have problems pronouncing that one. But plus philosophy and even music. Yeah, bang on. I definitely do agree with that one as well. A lot of discussions and conversations are popping up recently, even in Japan, is the interpretation of Buddha and the interpretation of Jesus, and how different, because of the Silk Road connections, these ideas of Jesus and Buddha goes from the Middle East and India, and then stretches out into all the way over to Japan, all the way over to Dublin. Rachel, did you know that in the 15th century there are depictions and drawings of Jews in Japan?
I did know that. I've
You
seen
did
them.
know that? Yes,
I've
they're
seen them.
awesome, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
fantastic. I love traveling around Japan and looking for Westerners in historical art.
Yeah.
Um, I love
And
it.
it's crazy. I have pictures of them there, and they're also over my Instagram, guys. If you want to have a look, I can post up them up. I actually have them on my own. What was it, Irishman in Okinawa thing, but I also have them on my Irish medieval history thing as well. Well, actually, I should post them over there. But it's two white men with,
Yep.
and they have the Jewish. I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's the headpiece on
The
the. It's a prayer
yarmulke.
book. That's the one,
The,
yarmulke, on their head, and they
yep.
have swords on them, and the locals talk about them. The locals don't understand who these people are. They're just like, well, these people are monks, but they go up, they live up in the mountains, and they're practicing martial arts, and they're white foreigners. And then from there, they do masks of these white foreigners, and they have big long nose, and they have the prayer
Yeah.
book on their head. And I'm like, these people are Jewish. This is wild. So they have these perfect drawings of them, which you can literally tell they're Jewish a mile away with the drawings. And then they do the masks, and it's a big red face mask. And I'm like, wow. And then from there, these Jewish people start to have an influence with the local Buddhists and, what was it, Shinto Buddhists people
Right.
around them. And even today, in both plays and obviously Shinto Buddhism, and even the interpretation of the wider world from the Silk Road going over to India, because this is a Jewish connection going, because they believe these people come from India and made their way over to Japan. And even the fact that they have this idea now in Japan of these fighting monks training karate up in the mountains and stuff, like this is very much a modern interpretation going back to the 15th century, is absolutely so fascinating and interesting. Another very interesting thing as well that causes a lot of arguments these days is the interpretation of Jesus. Obviously,
Oh
we're
God,
all
yes.
know about the interpretation of Jesus going over to the West into Rome, and then the modern day Roman Catholic interpretation, and also the Orthodox Christian interpretation, and even later on, then the Protestant interpretation of Jesus, which caused so much arguments and debates. But did you know that same interpretation then going over to the East, between the jigs and the reels, Jesus has a brother, which causes so much conflicts in even as far as Beijing and stuff about this. what's it called, Jesus' brother, because with that they mix in reincarnation and Buddhist ideas, because Christianity, Jesus's teachings of, love your neighbor and all that sort of stuff, that mixes in with Buddhism. And sometimes when
Very, very
Christians,
well. Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. Like, I'm only aware of this in the last few years or stuff as I moved over to Japan and stuff, and I didn't realize how much of a mix, because I have a lot of people that make fun of Asian Jesus, but the reason why Jesus is now Asian is the fact that sometimes the Christians were being persecuted, and so the Buddhists would hide the Christians in with them, and they would hide their symbols of, because a lot of these Buddhists, by the way, digests other religions into their own. So Buddha
Yep.
early on, he was very much like, well, if you believe in the sky god or if you believe in the water god, that's perfectly fine. That's not the purpose of Buddhism. So a lot of times other religions would add into Buddhism, and Christianity is no different. And so when Christians were being persecuted in Asia, this includes Japan, by the way, Buddhists in Japan used to hide Christians. And we know
Yeah.
this because of the way that they would hide the symbols of Buddha with Mary and Jesus. And that's why when modern day Westerners come to Japan, they're just like, why is Jesus Christ, what was it called, Asian now? Well, from because of the persecutions, they had to change the race of Jesus from white to Asian. Also, on top of that, as well, a lot of Japanese people find it easier to, how we say, give sympathy, kind of give their empathy to somebody who's, more closer and looks more like them. So modern day Christians as well switch the race from Caucasian over to, what was it called, Asian. Now, this is an idea that's actually taken from the Roman Empire as well, because this might break a few hearts in the comment section, but Jesus was from the Middle East. He wasn't actually from Italy. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, he was not blonde haired. He was not blue eyed. He did not look like Albrecht Dürer. Yeah.
yeah,
Did you ever hear of the theory that Jesus was in fact a Buddhist monk?
yeah.
That in those, did you ever hear about that? This is actually a real theory. This is not like weird conspiracy stuff.
I
This is actually a historical theory.
I can actually jump on board slightly with that one, because I was
Yeah,
looking at the argument, and it's a pretty good argument to make,
it
especially
is.
early on when Jesus goes off for 30 days into the desert to meditate and prayer. It is so similar to Buddha. Buddha lived 300 years before Jesus. So the teachings of the Buddhism, was already in Jerusalem. Well, ideas of it and techniques of it were already in Jerusalem by the time Jesus Christ was in Jerusalem around 30 AD. So those ideas, well, Bethlehem. So those ideas could have easily gotten to Jesus, and then for him to go out into the desert for 30 days, it sounds exactly like what a Buddhist would do. Like,
Yeah, but the theory I've read actually. So there's the missing years of Jesus.
yes,
That he actually went east and he
mm,
actually went to India,
yeah,
and because there's actually records in India of a man named Asa,
mm,
uh, and in the same exactly the right time, and that he went on this journey. He ended up becoming a Buddhist monk, and then coming back westward and bringing those dangerous ideas with him.
mm,
And there's actually a theory, and they believe this in India. They actually don't think he didn't die on the cross. He actually was taken down from the cross. Even if he was resurrected, he didn't ascend. He went
mm,
back to India and lived out the rest of his life as a Buddhist monk. And this is a tradition that has been in India for almost 2,000 years at this point. This
mm,
idea. So yeah, it's very interesting. It would make sense of why he starts, because his ideas were really revolutionary
mm.
for the place he was. So yeah, it's an interesting theory. It's one that upsets some Christians who think that Jesus's only importance is in ascending to heaven, not in the message he actually
Yeah.
preached. But a lot
Mm.
of the things he preached, you're absolutely right. Real Buddhist.
Yeah, but it's crazy that the East has like almost a completely different interpretation, and that there's so much kind of lore and stories from an Eastern perspective that's missing from a Western perspective, and that we think we know the full story of Jesus when in fact Jesus seems to start, and it's the same thing with Buddha as well, that it's not just a Western interpretation, that we're missing a large chunk of an Eastern interpretation as well. And that the
Right.
development of the churches, it's really only starting, and it's only really starting to build up as well. That our interpretation of Christianity is really continuing to evolve, especially now that we see Christianity really starting to boom in China, Japan, and though with that, all that, even the idea of Jesus having a brother. I can't remember. Can you remember the name of Jesus's brother? Because Jim
Ah,
is asking, is the
yes.
name James?
This, yes, yeah, James, the brother of Jesus. So there's a
Ah,
tomb. There's a tomb in Israel that they found that
mm,
actually is inscribed in it is James, the brother of Jesus. I think that's the
ah,
one. I think that is that is what Jim is referencing there. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a good document, a BBC documentary, I think, about it. It's
mm,
actually very interesting.
yeah. I have to look into that, especially since China really highlights Jesus. How they're very passionate about this, and it caused the church in China to go underground because of the fact that they really wanted to protect Jesus's brother in what was it called, China, and there was an entire revolt. Like there was a full-on civil war, a modern civil war as well. I think it was around the 1800s, where this guy, he claimed that he was the reincarnation of Jesus' brother, and he actually was trying to become emperor of China as well. And so there is
Oh
lots of
my
people
God.
take that very, very seriously, and
Um,
it caused the church in China to go underground. And it's only recently now, under the Roman Catholic Church, that they're starting to prep. They're still trying to, prep these people back up, trying to pull them out from the underground scene. But there's certain arrangements and agreements with the Chinese government that a lot of people in the Western Roman Catholic Church, both in America and Europe, disagree with. Which, one of which is the fact that Beijing now can choose their own bishops as part of this agreement between the Roman Catholic Church and Beijing.
oh,
Um,
that's too
yeah,
bad.
yeah. So it's,
That's
it's
real
causing a
bad.
lot of arguments.
That's
Yeah,
that's not good. That's real not good.
yeah,
Beijing's choices will have nothing to do with a good bishop. They'll have to do with someone who's a good party man.
yeah.
So that's real bad.
Yeah, yeah, fun times. Wait until Trump says selecting his own bishops as well. I'm
Oh
surprised
my
Trump isn't pushing for that.
oh
So,
my fuck. Don't say it. Jesus, man. What is wrong with you?
can I select my own bishops? What was
Oh
that
my
called?
God.
The Holy Roman
The
Empire.
Church of Trump.
Isn't that what caused the argument between the Holy Roman Empire and Rome at one stage as well? Is the Holy Roman Empire choosing its own bishops as well, or is that a different thing?
Oh no, no. The argument there was who got to crown the emperor, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That was it.
mean, among other things, but it wasn't about bishops so much. It was about, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, and what other? See, I can't see the chat, so maybe that's a good thing. Any other good questions that we need to address before we move on?
Just a lot of people expanding on Jesus having a brother, and also the similarities between Jesus and Buddha. A lot of people highlighting that as well, especially the
Yeah,
treatment towards women. I haven't come
yeah.
across anything about Buddha or Jesus ever being abusive to women.
Not,
I
no.
know, yeah.
They
So
were
that's
both
very true as
they,
well.
they were both known to be very not only equitable to actively include women in their ministry.
Mm,
So yeah, both of them. Yeah, Buddhism and early Christianity were extremely equal.
yeah.
It's only later interpretations that have ruined things. So
Mm. People just asking about our qualifications. I'm qualified in University College of Cork in Ireland, and I also went off and did, because my ultimate goal at the start was actually to become a historical tour guide. So I went off and then did a further course under one of the most famous tour guides, Robert, over in Cork as well. So I was trained under him for about a year, until, because his when he's was doing his training and stuff, he was very much pretty much hands on, trying to get us off doing as much tours as possible. So I kind of blurred into doing tourism and stuff over in Ireland. Rachel, where did you do your education?
Oh, let's see. Well, I ultimately graduated from the University of Delaware, but I studied at the University of Heidelberg. I studied at the University of Granada, and I also studied at the University of Paris while doing my studies. Because as a professional linguist,
Mm.
foreign language major, I had to study in other languages and other places. So, but I'm about to start my PhD work in fashion history. So yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, Philip is talking about getting his PhD, and I'm talking about getting my PhD. And God, isn't that what exciting times we should definitely vlog our PhD experiences together. We'll have a once a week bitch
Oh,
about
we
PhD studies.
that pushes me on to. We also need to highlight the fact that we're also doing the project as well. Help recreate 15th century Irish ensemble. If you guys want to support that project that myself and Rachel are doing, head on over to GoFundMe and type in "help recreate a 15th century Irish ensemble." Now that you remind me of both the project work that we're commencing right now,
Already doing.
right
Yep.
now doing quite well actually. So thank you for all the donations that you guys have sent to us so far.
Yeah,
um,
so for those who don't know, Philip and I are going to be working together to make him a 15th century Irish nobleman's ensemble, fashionable, of course, and it's going to be based on all of the primary source information I've gotten my hands on and can continue to get my hands on. So we're going to do this as accurately as possible, given the relative dearth of information that there is. And we're going to start from the skin out. So the first part, and we're probably going to get started on this soon because I think we've hit the first goalpost to be able to do that. We're going to start with the shirt, the lena, as it would be called in Irish, right? So the linen layer that will be against Philip's skin to protect his beautiful clothes from his not beautiful skin, or from the evils of human skin, right? So yeah, I think we'll be able to actually get started on that soon.
yeah, happy days. Thank you so much for everybody that has supported that so far. It means so much to myself and Rachel. I'm really looking forward to doing that project because that is a 15th century Irish clothing project. It is a huge deal to myself because nobody really ever covers 15th century clothing. Bar a few people, there's one person actually in the comment section, Kevin, who recently put together a 15th century Sligo outfit that myself and Rachel have been covering for quite some time. But our one is unique again because of the fact that this is the clothing of Desmond Fitzgerald, who was heavily connected with Florence and the Iberian Peninsula at the time. So, as Rachel has pointed out in the past, the outfit that we are putting together in this project has a lot of influences from the Florentine and from the Iberian Peninsula as well.
Oh, did Kevin make the Sligo outfit, the bog body
Yeah,
that that
Kevin
he that he
put that
did
one together.
the bog ensemble? Yeah,
Yeah.
it is fascinating how controversial that ensemble is,
Oh, really?
because there's some people who would swear left, right, and center that it's 17th century and that it's not
Oh.
medieval at all. So it's actually pretty controversial to make that as a 15th century ensemble.
Mm.
Um, I I can see arguments both ways, and I just bloody wish they would just carbon date it. Like, do we
Mm.
need to do a GoFundMe? Is Ireland is the state of Irish archaeology so
Yeah.
poor that we
Yeah.
need to do a GoFundMe
Oh,
to
I don't
date
know.
finds in the National Gallery or the National Museum?
The problem with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael is they have absolutely no problems giving no money to tour guides, historians, and archaeologists, but they expect so much money in return. It's crazy the government we have in place right now. They're just, I could literally bitch about them all day. And I've said this, by the way, to their face. So, what was it called? Another very important note as well that Susan highlights: Napoleon crowned himself Holy Roman Emperor, not. Napoleon crowned himself, but the medieval emperors. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. And Pastor John. Who's Pastor John? I don't know who Pastor John
Oh,
is.
Prester John.
Yeah.
Prester John. Now that is an interesting legend of the Silk Road.
Oh,
So Prester John is this legend. You've never heard of Prester John? Oh my
no.
gosh. Prester John is this legendary Christian king,
Okay.
supposedly living somewhere in Asia, who would
Hmm.
be able to help save Jerusalem,
Okay.
right? And he's this, because there's these legends of these Christian kings in Asia somewhere, and Prester John is one of them. And Prester kind of like maybe linguistically plays off of the word, a version of the word priest. So he's this priest king, and he's supposedly a Christian king. And so, they keep hoping that he will come and help, rescue the Holy Land and help fight off the Saracens. And no one really knows exactly where he is. But occasionally, a king will actually send an embassy out to go and try to find Prester John and deliver letters to him. We actually have in the archives, we have letters from medieval kings to Prester John requesting aid that obviously never came.
Yeah.
And as the Middle Ages wears on, the legends become even more inflated and grandiose. And some people say Prester John is in Africa. So there's some theories that maybe people heard about this Christian king in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And Ethiopia at the time was considered India, just so we are all clear. Just so we understand medieval geography, India was a general region that was not Europe. And so for some people in some versions of medieval geography, what is now Ethiopia counted as part of India. So there's some theories that Prester John might actually be based on the very real Christian king of Ethiopia. But they just didn't have enough geographical understanding to know, the average person didn't have enough geographical understanding to realize that Africa and Asia are not the same. So that's Prester John. What was the question about Prester John?
Because Ethiopia was very, very powerful at the time.
Very powerful. Yep.
Yeah. The trade route going from Europe the Mediterranean Sea, going to India, as you point out there, was seen as part of the Indian realm, which doesn't really surprise me because of the fact of and as we're like the main purpose of what we've been talking about today, the fact that Ethiopia was seen as part of the Silk Road, which we seem to very much ignore. We seem to take this idea of it going over to Baghdad or even going up around Kiev and then over to Moscow and taking that kind of route over to what was it called, Beijing. We don't think of the fact that it could have actually gone over to Egypt, and then from Egypt, Alexandria, down the Nile and over to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia over to India from that direction. We kind of ignore that these days.
Right. Yeah.
Thankfully, we're starting to do more research and study and looking at the wider, bigger Silk Road. Thank God. And something I'd love to spend more money and resources into studying for sure.
So wait, what was the question about Prester John? Was about him protecting the trade routes, or how? Because I can't see the comments. Remember, what was the question about Prester John?
What did we think about him? I think he's quite amazing after what you guys said to me.
Yeah, he's a legend. There is no actual. I read a very big book on Prester John, an academic book that delved into all of the primary source evidence discussing Prester John, and he's a legend. But again, as I was saying, it seems like the legend might be founded in, like actual kings who were Christian in Asia. For example, Armenia was Christian, and that's Asia, right? Relative as far as the Europeans understood, right? That was in the East. So there seems to be this idea of a Christian king beyond the realm of the Saracens, like on the other side of the Saracens, basically is. Yes, there were Christian kings, and there were even Mongols who were Christians, right? Like members of the Mongol court were Christian, Nestorian Christian usually, but Christian nevertheless. So it seems that the legend of Prester John is an amalgam of different Christian kings who were real, kind of all amalgamated into this one legendary figure that, by the way, never died. Like, you would think that if we're still talking about Prester John 200 years later, like he's a living man, someone would realize it can't be the same man. But there's no talk about Prester John the 10th or anything like that. It's just always Prester John. So it's also an immortal legend, interestingly.
Yeah, very interesting. I just for the moment, lads, I just want to, because there's a few questions are kind of going slightly off topic, and I kind of, because our time is very precious, I just want to focus on the Silk Road. And there was some amazing comments, especially to do with Ethiopia and stuff, to kind of expand that, which I think is
Mm,
very important on this conversation to do with the Silk Road. Jim
agreed.
asks a very good question, which might link us back in, which is what happened to the Gospel of Mary? And I think this
Oh.
conversation, whoa,
Oh, oh my God! Now we're getting into the apocrypha.
oh,
Oh God.
that's why I was like, I seen that one off Jim, and I was like, yeah. And there's a few other comments as well, expanding on this kind of stuff, by the way, Rachel. So
Oh my
stand by.
God. Oh, the apocrypha. Yeah,
You might as well tell the whole story.
when
That's what all the
when
questions
when
are about.
oh my God, when we were talking about Jesus and Jesus being a Buddhist monk, in my mind I was thinking about, well, everyone, this is going to get me run up on a rail by a lot of Christians, but
That's
uh,
what all the
what
questions are about, by the way. So you
what
might as well open
what
up the table.
what we understand of as the New Testament is curated. Everyone knows that, right? Like it isn't
And
it was
just because I know for a fact some people will start calling us various and assuming and
yeah.
scarecrowing us. Just for the record, myself and Rachel are Roman Catholic. Okay, so before you guys start calling us
Yes.
all kinds of stuff and so on and so forth, it's just we're educated Roman Catholics. Okay, educated Roman Catholics. That's just the
Yeah.
difference there. We're not 12-year-old boys on TikTok who just read the first Bible and now writing all these mad tickety talks. Okay, so just for the record,
Yeah.
we are Roman Catholics. So
Yep.
yeah,
I am part of the club, as they say. So I can
oh,
say these things because
mm,
I have fortunately always had priests who were also educated. And I come from a family of educated Catholics who think critically. And here's the reality about the New Testament. It's been curated, right? The
mm,
books that are now included in the New Testament have been chosen at several different councils, um, and specifically selected for inclusion, which also means that there are scriptures that have been excluded. The
mm,
Book of Mary is one of the ones that has been excluded, that was excluded. Now, why was it excluded? I don't have a dog in this fight, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to say it should have been included or it should have been excluded. It was excluded because it was examined. It was determined not to be a true gospel, as
mm,
it were, right? It was to be a fraud, to be a scam, to be a later creation. How
mm,
true that is, yeah, that's a topic. Like Philip and I could do 3 hours just on the Gospel of Mary, honestly. But
mm,
there's the Gospel of Jesus. There's the Gospel of Thomas. There's all kinds of Gospels that did not get included, and we actually have some of those Dead Sea Scrolls. Philip, you've heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Yeah.
yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the Dead Sea Scrolls contain a lot of different kinds of documents, but
Mm,
there's also early scriptures in them and versions of scriptures that don't line up with what is included in the New Testament as we know it
mm,
now.
yeah.
So that, there's a lot of debate as to whether we need to re-examine what is included in the New Testament based on more recent archaeological findings, for instance.
Mm,
So yeah, the Gospel of Mary, yeah, it was decided that it was fraudulent is not the word I'm looking for. Scam is also too pejorative. That it and hoax is also too pejorative. But basically, that it was not a true gospel. That it was not real. That it was written by a later author, a fiction, basically. Yeah, I mean, some of you may have read the Gospel of Jesus, wherein little boy Jesus is a terror, like literally kills
yeah.
things just because he can, and then resurrects them just because he can. So uh, yeah, so that's the reality of the New Testament and the Old Testament, is that they have both been curated by men, by
Mm.
people, not by God. Sorry.
um, we'll open up the can of worms now.
Yeah,
Ethiopia
right.
has the biggest Bible too, like 130 something. Am I correct?
So I know that Ethiopia has some of the oldest scriptures and some of the oldest Christian Bibles that exist. I don't know how many books theirs has. So you're one up on me on that score. You know, I've
Mm,
I have I have read about Christianity in Ethiopia and the history of Ethiopia.
Oh, he
I have
actually
not
makes, sorry, he makes a
dove in.
correction there.
Oh, go on.
And he says,
Oh, good.
sorry, it's 81 to 88 books in the Ethiopian Bible. That's an interesting as well because Ethiopia, they're not, what was it, Orthodox Christian or Roman Catholic as well. They're
They're
Coptic
Coptic.
Christian.
They're Coptic.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So the Ethiopia comes to Christianity in a very interesting way because they're Jewish,
yeah.
actually. Like
Mm,
that's the fascinating thing. Ethiopia is like the forgotten Jewish kingdom.
mm,
And there's some people who say that Ethiopia is actually one of the lost tribes of Israel. That the Queen of Sheba, supposedly was an Ethiopian queen who went and lay with Solomon and
mm,
had Solomon's heir, and so that actually Ethiopia is the true heir to Solomon, and that has all kinds of connotations to it. So Ethiopia is very interesting because it comes to Christianity from being Jewish and then
mm.
converts to Christianity. So yeah, Christianity is it's Coptic Christianity. It's a completely different Christianity from what most, not completely different. That's definitely exaggeratory. It's still recognizable as Christianity, but it is a different flavor than most people are used to.
Mm. Just scanning through the comment section there. Just a lot of people are agreeing or disagreeing with you. If you do disagree with us, definitely expand on it. And definitely, if you're using various parts of the Bible as well, just to highlight that fact, myself and Rachel are not theologians, but definitely for other people as well. If you are disagreeing with us, definitely take quotes from the Bible itself and tell us exactly where it is in the Bible and stuff. But just remember, myself and Rachel, we're more or less for a lot of this giving our own opinion. We're not actually qualified theologians, just to be honest with you guys. Okay. I have a Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Judas. Oh,
Oh yeah, the Gospel of Judas. Yeah, that's another
oh,
one. That's
what's
another
the
of the
story there?
Apocrypha I forgot to miss. I mean, it's another of the Apocrypha, right?
Mm,
And it was decided that they were not true, that they were not veracious,
mm,
that there is no veracity to them, right?
mm.
So, and again, I love to hear actual experts debate that. Debate the veracity of those apocrypha because it can be a very interesting and
Yeah,
enlightening
I've been
enlightening discussion.
dying for ages. I've got a few more guests I've been trying to invite on as well, but I'm dying to get a hold of. I probably will write a letter over, well, an email over to the church over in Ireland and stuff, because as you said, there, a lot of the clergy we deal with within the Roman Catholic Church, and I'm not saying everybody is very
Yeah,
educated
no,
in the Roman Catholic
no,
Church,
no,
but
no,
the
no,
people,
no, not
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. But the people I deal with within the Roman Catholic Church in Ireland in 2026, and the people that Rachel deal with, very educated men, and I'd love to have them on, and women as well, very educated people, and I'd love to have them on at some stage. Also, for everybody who's jumping on and joining us right now, first and foremost, hello in the Philippines. Thank you for jumping on today. We're talking about the Silk Road, guys. So if you have any connections or anything, or anything you'd love to jump on and talk about the Silk Road, especially the Silk Road going by the Philippines and stuff, the connections to the Indonesia and Malaysia and trade ports, and also the trade ports over in Japan and China, so on and so forth. Any information you guys want to add on, you're more than welcome to jump on. We're
Yeah,
not just talking about medieval
yeah,
Europe. We're
yeah,
talking about the wider world.
and we've somehow wandered into into the New Testament, and
Oh,
I don't
any
I don't
influences
even
there?
we oh Prester John. It was Prester
Yes.
John that got us here, right? Oh, and the talk about Jesus being a Buddhist monk. Yeah.
Oh, aye. Because
I mean, I
even
think I
today,
think I think in the case of some of the apocrypha, it was like the question of the dating of the actual document. Like the
yeah,
actual document itself was not old enough,
mm,
and so it was a question of, well, is this a copy of an older document,
mm,
right, or is this just a document that was made up on in the second or third century? Right?
yeah. Because it's interesting, all right, because a lot of this wild stuff seems to appear going from Baghdad over to India, and then from that trade route up into Beijing and stuff. It's funny how we don't see the same kind of different interpretations going from around, the Portuguese Spanish route up around into. India, and then from India over to Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. We don't see that kind of same kind of
Right.
interpretation. Like,
Well, I think it's because of difference in what kind of missionaries brought the
yeah,
idea, right? I
mm,
mean, by the time you've got the Portuguese, the Catholic, what was by then the Catholic Church, thank you Reformation. Um, basically, it's decided what it is, right?
mm,
It's the identity is there. It's decided what it is, at least for that era, and so there's a very standardized rubric,
mm,
so to say, to be spread, and the people spreading it are European,
yeah,
versus the Christianity that makes it into Asia early on is not brought by Europeans. It's
mm,
brought by Middle Eastern people at first, and then it's spread from there by Asians. So it's going to have a completely different feel than Christianity that's being brought by the Europeans.
yeah. Yeah, you guys, anybody can comment there and give their own interpretation and stuff, of course. And if you disagree with someone else in the comment section or myself and Rachel about various gospels or in the Bible, just make sure you give us the source there to better educate us for sure. But yeah, definitely keep up the comment section. And if you feel you can't comment because you feel this is outside your scope and stuff, no, you're grand. You're grand to give your own interpretation of what we're saying. But if you are actually supporting any facts or stuff, make sure you put in the sources and stuff, that we can leave this conversation much more enlightened and
Mm.
educated for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I am always happy to be politely and respectfully corrected.
yes.
I don't tolerate abuse. You can fuck right off if you want to pour abuse in the comments.
Yeah.
But I'm always happy for well-intentioned corrections.
Because we did, like, the comment
100%.
section right now, brilliant comment section. Even people who are disagreeing with what we're saying right now, straight away with the sources, I really, really appreciate that, guys. It means so much to myself and Rachel. It's just early on in the conversation, we had weirdos coming up and just name calling. I had to quickly ban a lot of them. And also on top of that, as well, we had a few of our own just saying a few bold words that the algorithm wouldn't be in favor of. So just be careful on what you write as well. I
Yeah.
won't be removing anybody who disagrees with us as long as you do it in an educated
No, no.
way.
And I mean,
It's
here's
just,
here's
yeah,
yeah, here's the other thing about biblical scholarship is that, like history in general, it's a living field of study. And
yes,
so there's always new information coming out. There's always potential for different perspectives. And that's why I will often say I can see the argument from both sides.
mm,
And the problem is that people want a black and white answer, right? They want it
yeah,
to be clear cut, clear cut.
yes, mm,
But the reality is that most of human existence is in the gray spaces between.
mm,
So you can absolutely disagree with me, and you may have evidence that supports that, and I may have evidence that supports my point of view, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, usually.
yes.
Yeah.
Always seems to be the case for sure.
Right.
And there were some brilliant comments now. I'm trying to scale up and down because I'm also trying to pay attention to the earlier the new comments that are coming in, and also the early ones as well. What's the story? Susan asks, what's the story with the Gospel of Mary Magdalene?
Oh my God. Okay, so that's another. That's
Cans, worms,
okay.
open, go.
No, I mean it's another of the apocrypha, right? It's
Yeah.
again, it was reviewed early on, like
Mhm.
second, third century AD, fourth century AD. It was reviewed and discarded as being apocryphal, as where that word comes from, as being not true, as being not a true gospel. And again, I
Yes.
haven't looked in. It's been a while since I've looked into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, so I don't know what the latest scholarship is on that. But the
Mm,
last time I read about it, it's that generally that most people were agreeing with that assessment, that it was composed well after the life of Jesus, and so not a true gospel. So that's I haven't I have that's the last thing I read, but it's been a couple of years because I came here for the Silk Road, guys, not for a discussion of the New Testament
uh,
and the Apocrypha.
but
So maybe could we please steer the conversation back to the Silk Road?
it's actually most of it, right? So I'll just, before we steer away from religion, because most of you guys are on talking about the Gospels and stuff, just focus mostly on the Silk Road, because I do when it comes down to the connection and going back to the Silk Road and its connection between Ethiopia and Ireland, that's a very interesting one as well. And I highlight that because of the fact we could see Coptic texts or Coptic influences popping up in insular Christianity literature in the early medieval period, especially during the Golden Age of Ireland and the saints and scholars. It's interesting because myself and Rachel have talked about this a few times, which is the vision of Tundal,
Mm.
which is a actually a story from the High Middle Ages, but it seems to be something that's very much echoing. And there's a lot of similarities between the vision of Tundal that, in fairness, does pop up in the High Middle Ages, but it seems to, because it has a very kind of apocalyptic feel to it and a very much vision feel to it, it seems to be very much in line with what was it called? The type of Coptic writing that was happening in Ethiopia much more early on in the 5th century. And that's interesting because as the Roman Empire is collapsing, we do have trade routes from Ethiopia going around the Mediterranean Sea and up around the Iberian Peninsula and then making its way up to the Kerry and Cork area. That's also very fascinating as well, because in the 5th and the 6th century, we can see all these effigy crosses start to appear all over Ireland, dated to the
Right.
5th and 6th century. And that's so exciting because these are not Celtic crosses that you're assuming. These are, in fact, Byzantine, Ethiopian, Greek crosses. These are Egyptian crosses. And also, these are crosses up around the kind of Jerusalem area of the 5th and the 6th century, which literally is so fascinating. Why are we seeing all of these carvings that look like the type of finds that we have? Basically, it looks like somebody has seen a cross in the Middle East and also
Right.
in the Byzantine Empire, has gone, oh my God, this looks so amazing, has gone back to Ireland and started to carve this stuff to show other people, hey, look how amazing the Byzantine Empire is. This is what our crosses look like over there, which shows a connection that people are moving between Ireland all the way down to the likes of Ethiopia, Constantinople, Egypt, etc., etc., etc. Even with the collapse of the Roman Empire in the West, that the Irish are still moving around the place, and we still have movement, which is connected to the Silk Road and the bigger picture that Ireland is continuing to flourish even after the collapse, and in fact goes into then a golden age of saints and scholars, which is very exciting for this conversation for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's people, yeah, and this brings us back to our perennial point, Philip,
Mm,
is that the medieval world is highly interconnected, that the ancient world is highly interconnected and continues to be through the so-called Middle Ages, right?
mm,
The Justinian plague disrupts things for
yes.
probably about 100 years. It feels like if you look at the way things kind of do actually slow down. But the period that I would actually call the Dark Ages, there is a Dark Age for certain. It's after the
Mm,
Justinian plague, but it's not 1,000 years of Dark Age. So there still is, once people stop dying in mass numbers, things
yes.
pick back up again. The connections pick back up again. And Ethiopia is very advanced, very powerful in this stage. It's one of the bastions of Christianity at that point, and especially in the face of the rise of Islam and the march of Islam, literally across across the world. Ethiopia withstands that,
Mm,
and so it doesn't surprise me if you end up with crosses that look like they could be plucked out of Lalibela,
yeah.
uh, for instance. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it is very, very fascinating for sure. And just a comment on your side as well. Somebody was asking, well, basically saying colonization ruined the world, the Silk Road, so on and so forth. Would you agree that colonization, ones that comes to mind, is the Portuguese and Spanish colonization going up to around
It was
the
already
beginning
no, it
of
was already done. The Silk Road
uh,
was already over at that point. It was
okay.
the rise of colonization was a direct response to the Silk Road having been disrupted.
Mm,
Roads, the roads, those trade routes having been disrupted. It's again, historians are trying to move away from calling it the Silk Road or roads even because it implies it's only about silk, and it's very much not.
Mm,
right? It's about pottery, it's about spices, it's about slaves. Yeah, but by that point, the reason you could even say it's the Mongols' fault that we no, it's not. But the reason I was just listening to a lecture on this morning or yesterday, actually.
mm,
One of the reasons that Europe looks outwards is because those trades stop, and
mm,
everyone was like, "Yeah, we like our spices, so how can we get them?"
mm,
So, that drives Europe. They also like sugar. How can we get it? Right. So that drives Europeans to look for other ways, and that's what triggers us to colonize. It could be alternate history. If
mm.
those trade routes had not been disrupted, Europe may never have felt the need to actually go anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Uh, so no, that it's because those routes are disrupted that Portugal starts looking to other ways to get to India because they want those spices,
Mm,
right? That's what it's all about. It's about the spice must flow.
yeah.
So that's what drives the Portuguese to do that. And then
Mm,
you know the Reconquista finishes just about it. This is this really weird conflux of a coincidence of events, right?
yeah.
The Silk Roads get brought to a halt. Basically, they get disrupted anyway,
Mm,
because it's much more expensive to send things through those routes because of now all of the additional taxes that are being lumped on top of them. And at the same time, the Reconquista of Spain finishes. So Spain is finally Spain. It's a
mm,
kingdom because they eject the last Moorish rulers out of Granada. Fernando and Isabella actually, they marry and they unite Spain all under one single crown, basically. And so Portugal is, off getting its thing on. And so Spain now has more time and energy to devote to other activities,
mm,
which include sending this idiot from Genoa out across the ocean to see what kind of stuff he might bring back. And that
mm.
was a venture, right? And I mean that in the modern sense of venture. It was a venture investment that Fernando and Isabella didn't count on necessarily paying anything off. They did not equip him well.
Mm.
They did not give him lots and lots of resources. They gave him kind of the bare minimum to get him to somewhere. And if he came back, then fine. And if he didn't, then that's fine too. Like really.
Like chucking them out there.
So, and that basically is what triggers everything. It's
Mm,
not that we didn't know that Europeans were unaware that there were lands to the west. The
mm,
Norse knew that. The Greenland colony, for God's sake.
yeah.
It's just, it didn't matter. It wasn't because what they were seeing up there wasn't enough to prompt them to keep going, right? There
Mm,
wasn't resources that they needed there
yeah.
at that time.
Mm, 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 mm.
But then,
Uh,
and instead of ending up in, kind of this inhospitable Newfoundland, Columbus ends up in the tropics,
yeah.
which automatically seems like it's got to have something going for it, right?
Mm.
So
Because didn't he start branding the Cubans Japanese and everything? Like it turns into a complete
he called, yeah,
mess.
that's why he called them Indians. He's like, this is India. It
Mm,
must be.
yeah.
There are people here with brown skin and they don't speak
Mm,
my language. They're not Christian. It must be India.
yeah. Oh, it's absolutely wild because I remember I covered with Dr. Dermot Scully because he found a whole load of areas around there. And one of the spots, and it caused an argument when he returned between the Portuguese and himself, is he's describing this spot called Japan. And in his description, and the Portuguese are like, that's not Japan. We've been to Japan. That's not Japan. And he's like,
Right.
it's Cuba, by the way. He points out Cuba on the map. And
Right.
they're like,
Right.
you've discovered a new spot. And I'm pretty sure, and the comment section might
Yep.
support what I'm saying here. He solidly thought that was India. There were already people in his own time going, "Hey, wait, there's something weird going on here. That's not Japan. What's going on here?"
Yeah.
And he denied it. He thought he had found another way to get to India. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. He almost had to believe that because that was the point,
Yeah.
right? Was to bring back the spices.
Mm,
Um, Ironically, he did actually. There is one spice that he may have found, allspice, because that's actually from Jamaica.
mm,
I haven't. I just thought about that. I haven't looked into that to see if that was among the things he brought back with him that everyone thought were mostly disgusting. foodstuffs. I mean,
Yeah.
the initial everyone. I know everyone wants to think, oh, Columbus came back and he brought the tomato and the potato, and they're thereafter every European loves tomatoes and potatoes. Nope,
Mm.
not true. They did not like either of them. So yeah, yeah,
And
it's yeah. So the Silk Roads. The question was, did you know? Is it colonization that killed the Silk Roads? No, it's the interruption of the Silk Roads that led to colonization.
for sure. And where the hell was I going with this one? Oh yes. Oh, where am I? And what was it called? Susan asks, how easy was it to travel from Constantinople to Samarkand and Central Asian markets and back to Constantinople and the Baltics in this era?
I mean, depends on what you mean by easy. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I was thinking that
Uh,
too.
I mean, it was done a lot. It was super common. It was not a special trip. It was a trip made regularly
Well,
by merchant caravans.
I
So
think it depends who was running the protection rackets in the center at the time. Because, and even on top of that as well, like from my understanding of the literature, it seems to me going from Constantinople to India, when it was ran, that protection racket in the middle from Persia, the Persian area,
mm,
the area that was meant to be, Baghdad and all those spots, those seem to be really, really good when it's ran after the Mongolians had wrecked everything up. When the Mongolians are running the what was it called, the protection racket at that area, and then when that collapses, it just goes terrible again. Like that whole
yeah,
area seems to go to shite after the Mongolian protection racket kind of collapses and breaks into internal fighting. And it's the same with the Seljuk Turks. The Seljuk Turks seem to be doing quite a good job, but then there seems to be collapsing of internal fighting because what happens is that how
yeah,
is it supposed to work? At the very, very start, if we strip it right down, is that there was no, at the very start, if you're moving, for example, from Persia to Baghdad and then over to Constantinople, there was no protection racket. What you did to get from A to B, from one settlement to the next settlement, is you hired a war band. The problem is that your war band, which is made up of nomads with horses and their arrows and so on and so forth and their lances, is that they could be attacked and killed by another warband, or, and this was a huge problem as well, your own warband that you hired to protect you could turn against you and kill you and steal your stuff. Okay, and that
yeah,
happened a lot. The Seljuk Turks get annoyed about this and they set up their own protection racket and start to dominate that whole region. The problem is the exact same problem that it was there in the start: internal fighting, not just who should be running this protection racket, but also people within the protection racket attacking their own caravans, giving them a bad name and stuff, which eventually brings on the Mongolians. The Mongolians are all the way in Mongolia, and Genghis Khan is looking at this kind of stuff going, hey, wait, we could go in there and take over the protection racket. The only problem is the settlements with the Seljuk Turks have all become corrupted. And at times when Genghis Khan comes up with his new fantastic idea of, I'll take over the protection racket, these corrupt politicians, in Genghis Khan's interpretation, um, end up killing, allegedly, according to Genghis Khan, they kill Mongolian traders in that route, which really annoys Genghis Khan. So he goes down and just wipes, he not only just wipes out other rival protection racketeers, in particular Seljuk Turks, but he goes into the settlements themselves because they had killed Mongolian traders and wagons. He goes into the settlements itself and just wipes it out of it. But a very important thing to note is unless a merchant or a trader had been involved with what had happened, they were actually put to the side. So when he goes in there and he commits his mass, chop chop, he does actually, like, don't get me wrong, he kills a lot of farmers. A lot of poor innocent farmers are killed by him, right? Which needs to be noted. But what is very important to note is the fact he actually puts the merchants, the traders, anyone who's involved with the numbers and understands the system and isn't involved with what happened with the killing of Genghis Khan's merchants and traders. They're all put to the side. He protects them as much as possible because they're so important in producing a
Yeah.
whole load of money. It's the same thing with when Timid, the lame, takes over the protection racket. He does exactly the same
Oh,
thing.
Tamerlane.
That's the
Yeah.
one. He takes over
Yeah.
after the Mongolians, and he does exactly the same thing. When the settlements end up killing a few of his own traders, allegedly, it is argued that they were using those as an excuse to take over and put in their own favored merchants and traders, but that's an argument for a different day. He does the same thing. He puts all the merchants, the traders, the artists, all those educated people. He doesn't touch any of them. He doesn't touch any of the educated people. He doesn't touch any of the
Right.
artists. He doesn't touch any of the bards. He doesn't treat anyone to do with the education system on purpose. He doesn't touch. But what he does is he gets a lot of the anyone involved with the Renaissance, because this is going now into late medieval, the Renaissance, he gets all those people and he brings them back to his own capital so he can spark off his own Renaissance in his own capital, going into the late medieval Renaissance era, which is very important to note on understanding how this protection racket works at the time.
So yeah, the reason we're standing over here is because I was at 4% on my phone. Because I just realized we've been going for 3 hours.
Do you want to start finishing up there, Rachel, or are
Yeah,
you good to go for a few more questions?
I think that might be a good place to finish up.
Yes.
I would say that, so Susan, like any question like this, like, when and where or when exactly is going to differ. I will tell you that in general, that was a pretty common set of routes that were taken for 1,000 years.
Mm,
Um, how easy it was, yeah, like Philip was saying, it's going to vary highly.
mm,
But it was common enough that goods came very regularly and merchants came back regularly. It was also common enough for it to be a problem that I know that people took out insurance policies in Italy
wow.
on on merchant ventures that involved that direction. So
Mm, mm.
yeah,
So very exciting stuff. We could end up talking about this all day because the comment
yeah.
section now has wanted us to switch over to the Mediterranean and the Turkish trade and the Turkish piracy and stuff there. And geez, we could talk all day about that stuff. But
Oh God,
regardless,
yes.
lads, what I want to do now is just highlight the fact that myself and Rachel, if you want to support the channel, you can always pop over to my Patreon at Irish Medieval History. I do classes every Sunday night. 9 p.m. Irish time. This week we're covering 13th century Ireland with the Anglo-Irish and the relationship with Henry III. So definitely head over to my Patreon if you're interested in all that stuff. You can donate whatever money you want, both on my subscription on YouTube, but also on my subscription over on Patreon as well. Any money you want. But if you want to do those classes, head on over to my Patreon. Only 20 quid a month for a whole load of classes every Sunday night, and they're recorded as well. So if you miss the class, you can always watch the recording as well, and any other stuff as well that is posted up there. Also, Rachel, how do people support your channel if anybody wants to give you any sponsorship or anything?
Yeah, so if you're interested in sponsoring my work and in supporting my work in medieval material culture and fashion history, and actually making things like this, I have a patron, the Creative Contessa on Patreon, and channel membership here on YouTube. And it comes with a host of extra perks. I have a Creative Contessa Discord where we share our projects and our ideas, and I share extra resources on a regular basis. Channel members and patrons have access to full hour tutorials, to extra videos that I don't share with anyone else, to videos I actually charge people to access normally.
Mm.
So yeah, if you're interested in supporting my work and it comes with perks, feel free to check out Patreon, or damn you phone, why are you so hungry? Patron, or channel membership on YouTube.
Happy days. And just one last thing to note as well. Myself and Rachel are doing a massive project on how to recreate a 15th century ensemble. Basically, we are putting together a outfit from the 15th century Irish clothing, anybody ever covers 15th century clothing in Ireland.
It's
And the
true.
clothing that poor Rachel here is looking to put together is an outfit on the Desmond Fitzgeralds, which are heavily influenced by the Iberian Peninsula and from Florentine fashion. So myself and Rachel want to put this ensemble together and highlight Ireland's connection with the wider world. And if you support this project that myself and Rachel are putting together, Rachel promises to put together a diary documenting how you yourself, as a reenactor, a living historian, or somebody who's just curious, full stop, Rachel will be putting together and documenting her entire what was it called, adventure, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, the adventure, yeah. The
Yeah,
entire process. The entire
process. That's the word.
process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of
Yep.
putting this together. So if you want to support that work, definitely head on over to GoFundMe and type in recreate. Sorry, 1 second. Help recreate 15th century Irish ensemble, and there we're looking to put together Desmond Fitzgerald's outfit. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for all the support, and as always, thanks very much, and Slán go Bye.
Stay stay creative, guys. Bye everyone.